Hey guys, welcome to the Derick podcast. We've got a good guest today. He's a veteran in the podcast game. He's here to hopefully give us a couple pointers, but also have a good conversation with. We've got my friend here. His name is Danny Hoefelmann. How's it going, man?
It's going well. I appreciate you having me on, Derick.
Yeah, I'm excited. When we kind of put this out there, you'd reached out to me more of a congratulations.
Yeah.
For doing it more than anything. And you were one of the guys I was hoping would, because it kind of opened the door for me to invite you on.
Yeah. Well, it's cool to see like what you're getting started, and just like even without fully knowing like what it is yet, just the amount of like momentum you're building towards something, and you just figure it out later. Like that's really cool to me. So like just seeing that this was happening, like I get to play in the podcast world all over the country with people that I work with online, but like primarily in Phoenix. And I've always thought like, man, if there was someone up in St. George just becoming that connector, like it would kill it. So I was excited to see it for you.
Yeah. I think having Mallory come in and do this is really going to boost everything. And I was unaware that you were more of that technical side, because I knew you had your own podcast.
Yeah. So my podcast is called The Good in Today, and my company is called The Good in Media. And basically we produce custom video and mainly podcasting. Like 3/4 of what I do is straight podcasting.
Okay.
And some people I go on site and I create sets like this and we do that. Other people record their stuff via Zoom and just send it our way. We edit it and send it back to them sounding pretty.
That's
so
awesome.
that's the bulk of the business side right there. And I've been very fortunate to be doing podcasting for about 4 years. And like the beauty of being the producer of these things, and the reason that I think someone should be a host and just keep this going, like consistency is going to be your friend.
Sure.
But when I left that last job, I knew like leaders in like 100 different categories of all the different hosts I'd had on over the day. So I just called people and like, hey, by the way, I'm not there. And I knew like 10 strategic people, and I replaced my salary by the end of that month. So it really is one of those, like, it's kind of who you know.
Yeah.
And like I set out the goal for The Good in Media of like, when I left the last company, paused the podcast, so it hasn't gone for 2 years. I have recorded 6, so like we'll force myself to start kicking them out again.
Yeah.
So thank you for that inspiration. And like almost jealousy, I'll just say, because now I have to feel like I have to re-kick off and keep up. But really like just knowing The Good in Media to me was, I can either restart my podcast initially and I can impact so many people, or we can be a brand that just stands for impact and positivity. I can support dozens of brands, and we can reach collectively way more than I ever could on my own.
Sure.
So that's really what The Good in Media started out as.
That's awesome. I think that the outreach that you're going to have on that, by opening that up, I mean, you're 12 times what you could have done by your own, even though you have a big network.
Yeah, and we have multiple podcasts that have broken 1 million at this point. So it's like, it's really cool to see the impact of like where they're going. And like some of them started without us and we've taken over.
Sure.
A lot of people we've started from scratch. So like it's cool to see all the levels and all the stages of it.
That's cool. Well, like we were just talking before we started, high school, obviously went to high school together, Pineview 07, and then you were still around in town for a while.
I was here for 3 or 4 more years. Yeah.
And
So
then straight to Arizona?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've kind of bounced around. So when we went to, I worked in a factory here for probably 5 years after high school. And then just before that 5 years was up, they decided to close the factory. And at the time, I was reading a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Sure.
And basically, like, someone was trying to recruit me to Arizona to go do pest control. And I was like, yeah, it's literally not going to happen. Because I also at the time believed that A, I didn't like people, and B, I had no people skills. And actually, like, I had really good people skills. I just didn't know it because I worked night shift in a factory. So people skills was like talking crap on the radio. Like it was a very different thing. But I was reading that book, and he talks about how like the number one skill you can have is sales. And if you understand that, you'll never be poor. Like you can do anything at that point, basically. So I got talked into it, and then was like 90% there. And then they announced my factory was shutting down. I was like, oh, okay, it's time to go to Arizona.
That's the boot out the door.
Yeah. So it was like one of those like, oh, I might not have had the guts to actually pull the trigger. So thank you. Got it.
Well, the sales being a big part in life, that's funny because I've thought about this last couple of days. If you can sell, I mean, it's in every aspect of your life.
Yep.
It's not even just, me selling a safe or you selling a podcast bundle to somebody. It's, your wife, selling yourself on your wife.
It's trying to get my kids to go to bed.
Trying to get your kids. It's in every aspect of your life. And I think people don't realize how important that is. And like knowing you in high school, I know you had good people skills. And so going through, it just comes full circle on all that. I just want to touch on that, but go ahead.
Well, I laugh because I'm like, I don't know what people knew about me in high school because I was the dude that had like these headphones on like most of the time. And like, I didn't talk to many people. Like, I think I was one of those people that like, I knew most everyone. And I feel like most people knew me just as like the big dude.
Well, Chief Hoefelmann.
But like, I was only close to like 5 people.
Yeah.
And like, they weren't in our grade. So like, it was one of those things like, I don't know. Like there's a lot I've learned about myself since then and just trying to figure out like, why was I like antisocial or like, why did I think that was a good idea? Stuff like that. But I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we had conversations in high school, I feel like every now and then. I mean, I knew who you were.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was no big time either, but it's kind of funny how all that shakes out. And now here we are both on a podcast.
Yeah.
And we're going to have people sit and listen to us talk for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Well, hopefully there's something valuable for them to go in there. But getting kind of back to like when we got to Arizona,
sure,
you have seen that like we bounced around a little bit. And that was because essentially I wound up doing like a bunch of jobs in a, I don't know, fairly quick span there because we did pest control for the summer, worked at an actual corporate job for about 2 years. And then I went and did Vivint door to door. And we did Kentucky, Texas, and I did some California too. And I think that's where, like, when you start talking, like, mental health and stuff like that, that was more where that side kicked in for me, was we went and did the summer in Kentucky. And I already knew I wasn't, like, happy. But I don't know. Like, if you've ever felt depression, like, I don't know how to describe it. Even in all this time, like, it's kind of hard. Mm-hmm. But, like, I always knew I wasn't, like, super happy. But I basically just turned off emotions.
Yeah.
And then, like, around the time I was, like, 25-ish, I was knocking doors in, it would have been 25, 26, somewhere there, whatever. But I was out in Kentucky doing a door-to-door sales job and realized that I was like suicidal, like while knocking on doors. And I was just like, oh, like this isn't good.
Yeah.
Like I can't be this. Like I already have an established family. Like it's not good for anyone. But especially once you've established a family and all that stuff, I'm like, dude, there's so many more people that will ripple if this happens.
It's not just you.
Yeah. That was like, I don't know how to handle this in this moment, but also you're doing one of the hardest jobs in existence, which is just getting door slammed in your face all day long. Yeah. And this is my, like, how do I build my mental health back up? Next door. Like, here we go.
Yes.
So when we came back from that, we went back to Arizona, and that was when, like, legit everything kind of tanked on my end. Uh-huh. And that was all the stuff that I basically, like, suppressed and didn't talk about and didn't feel. Like, a lot happened from the time I was 11 to then, basically all hit me at once. And I got to a point where I was like, legit, like, no, I can't work, which today my brain can't fathom that.
Yeah.
Like I have no idea. And I still very much have like rough times, but I cannot imagine the state that I was in where like literally like I wouldn't go to work and I lost kind of everything. And we had to move to Texas, but I got to hide it. Like the Vivint team I was on got assigned to Houston. My sister lived in Houston. Okay. So I was like, oh, hey, guys, I'm going to go down a couple months early. Didn't know I kind of lost everything in the middle. And I don't know, that kind of just allowed me to hide things more. And then I tried another summer knocking there in Houston. And I was like, well, this is the same result as last time. Like, I didn't fix anything.
Yeah.
I just was like, oh, like, I'll try again. And, yeah, that kind of brought us to the point of living there for a year. But we've been all over.
Dang, man. Not me, man. I've been St. George since I was 7, been here my whole life.
Yeah.
We actually just moved out of the house I grew up in.
Really?
So Amanda and I just built a house. We moved in January.
Congrats.
So I've lived in the same house since, well, it was 22 years, 23 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always look at people like, how do you do all that? How do you go from place to place to place? Because I've literally moved once my whole life.
I feel like it's just like what you do. Like once you've done it once, it's not really
not
hard.
a big deal.
Yeah, like leaving St. George. So like when I came out from St. Louis, that wasn't on purpose either. So my parents split, and like we just in the middle of the night, it was loaded into a car. Boom, split. And like that was where like when I say like all emotions for me just kind of shut off, and I became like man of the house, even though I was 11.
Yeah.
I was now the guy in the house because Dad's still in St. Louis. That was what brought us out to Utah.
Okay.
And essentially, that move sucked. And then the one to Arizona was kind of like, well, we actually have all the roots here. Like, I don't know how to do anything. So like when we got down there, it was truly like, it was a wild first little bit because it was the first time we never had like babysitters. We didn't have like
support system.
Yeah, like all the things we had up here in St. George. Once we learned to go without that, it's not that hard anymore. Because now like Brienne wants to move to Manhattan like next year, and she's not joking. And that's probably what's going to happen.
Yeah, well, if she wants it.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're tracking at.
That's awesome. Yeah. See, I don't think I could ever leave here because of like I feel like my mental health would suffer a lot. I think if I left St. George because I have such a support structure here, and I mean my family's been here a long time, and my brothers know a lot of people, and it's very rare that we go somewhere and someone doesn't know someone in mine or my wife's family.
But I think it's cool here for you and like a lot of people because like you actually interact with the community. Like you have all that here. I always kind of kept to myself anyway. So it wasn't like
it's a good point.
The community was my thing. And even like a lot of my family out here, like my mom, like mad at me saying it, but I'm like, I don't get along with most of them. Like I just never have. So like I didn't feel that sense of loss when I left. So I don't know, that part of it was a lot easier for us because the family that I'm super close to is all out in St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
I've not lived around them for 20 years. So I don't know.
Is your dad still there?
He's there now. So my parents, they split at 11. They were apart for a year. Then he moved out here and they got back together.
Okay, because I wasn't aware that your parents were divorced.
Well, so they got back together about a year and a half later. And then it was like junior year high school. So in between like junior and senior football season. I only remember that because like we were over at our coach's house lifting weights and one of our guys didn't show up. And like this is when I realized that like I'm more numb than I probably should be.
Okay.
But like one of our guys didn't show up and I was like, Coach, like where's our guy? And he's like, oh, like he's having a hard time. Like his parents are going through a divorce. And I was like, well, yeah, mine finalized 2 days ago. We're fine. Like, where's he at? And like, it was one of those moments where you realize like we had a lot of dysfunction on that line because Coach couldn't believe that really was like 2 days ago. And I was like,
and you're fine.
I'm fine. Like I understood it that time. You know, I was old enough to see that like, it's probably for the best.
Kind of process it. And
Yeah. And like, I won't say I processed it. I just stayed really busy. Had a full-time job at 15 and just lifting, sports, all the things. But essentially like going through that time, we asked like all the linemen were working out together. And I was like, who here's parents are still together? One person.
Yeah.
So out of the like 8 or 9 guys there, only one of us still had parents together. So it was like, for better or worse, it normalized it so much for me that it was just like, all right, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I'll say looking back on things later, yeah, it was probably a big deal. But at the time, no.
Right. Well, that shutting your emotions off when you're 8, right? When you're 8?
11, I'd
11,
say.
11. I mean, having kids now, like how do you feel like, because you're obviously, I mean, you and your wife are pretty close. From what we hung out once at Tyler Tolman's house. That just hit me. So like I've seen you guys a couple times,
at least once since then. But
yeah. How do you feel like that? How important that is for your kids, your daughter and your son, to see the bond that you and your wife have?
I think it's the most important. Like kids terrify me, dude. Like when I, but like my son is 9 and my daughter's 11. So like, she is the age I was when I was pulled out of bed, put in a car, and like we drove away. And like I can't fathom that right now. Like if that happened, like as a dad, I don't know how I would react. Like I have no idea how I would respond to that. As the kids, like my heart breaks thinking about that because I'm just like, how do you make kids pick between parents? They don't get it when they're young. They don't understand if there is a situation that sucks in one way or the other, you know?
And so I think where they try to protect the kids, sometimes it almost makes it worse too. Like I get it, you're 11, maybe you shouldn't have the full extent explained to you, but at the same time, what does need to be explained so you can somewhat, you know, make sense of it.
Well, and I think back on that time and like with my kids, we try to be so open, like about everything. Like there's literally 0 taboo subjects. Like if it comes up, let's talk about it because I'd way rather you hear it from me than go look it up because my kids are real good at Google already. You know, and it's like just
the information's so easy. It wasn't when we were 11.
Well, and like half the time when like we're talking, if my daughter hears it, she'll like fact check me on the side and be like, actually, Dad, it was this. Like, jeez. But anyway, like I think back of like what you retain at that age. And I remember essentially like when we got in the car, my entire family rode with my mom, and I was alone in the car with my brother. So my dad's previous marriage, I have an older brother and sister that are 10 years above me and my sister.
Okay.
And essentially I was in the car with him, and he called our bishop as we're driving away and was just like, hey, so like we left, like I need you to go talk to Dad in the morning and just make sure he's okay.
Yeah.
Like, and he let him know like there's guns in the house, like just know like this is not a good situation. And like it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I thought back on that. I was like, oh, that's like my first recollection of like he might commit suicide is the translation of what that meant.
Yeah.
But I didn't get that.
You connect the dots.
Yeah. So it was like kind of a trippy realization for me to just be like, oh, like that's what my brother meant. And like, I don't know, like I think that's where I realized more things impacted me than I thought.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like I said, all through high school, I think most people, I don't know what most people thought of me, to be honest, but like big quiet person who like didn't say much, and I started a lot of bonfires. And like I think half the school thought I was a stoner, and the other half like knew I wasn't because they were the stoners, and I hung out with them too. And like,
yeah.
I don't know.
They're like, no, we're the stoners, and he's not.
Yeah, like they don't offer me things when we hang out together. They know I'm the designated driver who can talk to the cops when they come to the fire. Like, this is good. So,
well, let's touch on a little bit of that mental health stuff we kind of brought up.
Yeah.
I might just kind of let you run with it. I mean, I listened to a podcast that I think you were on someone else's and you talked about it.
Probably.
It's been a few years though. So maybe I'll just kind of hand it over to you and I'll jump in and we'll try and pull some stuff out of it.
Is there an element of something that you want to kind of dive into, or like?
Honestly, do whatever you feel. I think that.
I don't know. Cause I think that's the thing for me is like, I've been trying to figure out more stuff in the last little while, because like, I always thought it was like, all right, like I'm not happy. How do I be happy? And like it became like kind of that pursuit of happiness kind of thing. And then like recently, like I wanted to ask you, one of the things was like, as I think about the definition of happiness and how do we achieve that, I think it's a fleeting goal that you never actually hit. Mm-hmm. And like, I think it's one of those things where it's like more so, are you living in a way that you're proud of yourself?
Yeah.
And like, if you are, and you're doing things you enjoy, you're just kind of in a perpetual state of like joy. But I don't think like happiness sounds too much like a destination that keeps moving. Like, how do you define happiness?
That's a good question. I mean, and this probably might not answer your question, but what comes to mind is when people ask me, like people bring up drama or people bring up stuff that's happening in the world. I tell people, man, I wake up every morning. I make sure my family's protected. I try to grow my businesses, and I go to bed and do the same thing the next day.
Yeah.
My wife's actually brought that up to me because if she could choose anything to do in her life, it would be travel. Mm-hmm. I mean, she's been, around the world a couple times, and like right now she's actually driving up to the Wind Rivers up in Wyoming to spend the week up there. And me, like, I don't want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so like, this is what I would rather be doing.
Yeah.
So honestly, I think happiness to me, I think the way you put it is correct, that like maybe it keeps moving and it will throughout life. Right. I mean, I was fairly happy before, we got pregnant, and I'm still happy. Yeah. But like, I thought that was like my pinnacle, like I go to work every day. I've got 3 businesses. I've got 5 employees, I've got all this stuff, and this is what I've always wanted. I've always wanted to work for myself. Yeah. And I made it. Right. Yeah. And then I remember having a talk with my brother, and I was like, dude, I've always had a big dream to shoot towards, or what I felt like was a big dream at the time. And, whether that's, make 6 figures, whether that's work for yourself, whatever it is. And I'm like, dude, I'm 30 and I did it.
I was just say, did your brain always think that way though? Like 100%. When you were in high school, like you thought entrepreneurially and like all that stuff.
I couldn't wait to get done with school so I'd go work.
Yeah. Cause that was the thing that I never understood. Like my capacity of like how big I thought was whatever factory I was at, like one day I'll run this factory.
Yeah.
And that was the extent of it. You know, like I didn't look at myself as an entrepreneur or someone who could run a business, because like smarter people than me do that, you know? And then like the more time I spent around business owners doing consultations in marketing and different things and stuff like that, the more I was like, oh, all of them are winging it too. Like,
yeah, we're all,
all of us are just trying to wing
it
it and like keep everyone happy and like not piss off customers, but like,
yeah, hopefully you make a profit at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like what pushed me into even being on this side of it, which I don't know, I'll tie back to mental health too, but like I helped start a different media company, and I was the number 2 there for about 2.5 years. And I thought I would spend the next decade there. No joke.
Yeah.
And I knew that person was smart. I'll just be them. And like, if anyone knows like Gary Vee, like he's talked a lot about like, not everyone's meant to be number 1. Some people are 2, 5, 7, 12, but like you're better to be 12 at a giant company than like 1 at something that fails, you know?
Sure.
I always assumed 2, 5, 7, like somewhere in there. And then like for better or worse, like we just came to differences, and I got fired from that job, which I had thought to do for like 6+ months. Like I need to leave.
Yeah.
But I had no guts to do it. And then I got fired. And then, like I said, like, because I just knew everyone, like I was the relationship person. So like I called strategic people and was like, by the way, I'm out on my own. And they were like, oh, we've always wanted to work with you.
Yeah.
Like, so you're not associated? I'm like, no, I'm out. I'm like, oh, cool, let's work together. Like,
right. Isn't that funny how that works?
Yeah. And then like from there, it's just been like, okay, how do I just keep winging it and keeping it going?
Right.
And then,
well, and I feel like it's just figuring out the next thing.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing I've learned having our retail store to me was a big jump to have on my own. I mean, I had been making holsters in my basement for 7 years.
Yeah.
You know, like that was not hard for me to do. Opening up a store takes on a whole different thing of overhead and employees and, you know, everything else, inventory, right? Going into that's what scared me. That was like the next jump for me.
Yeah.
And I guess coming back to figuring it all out, it's like every couple of weeks something comes up and I pencil in losses, I guess is the best way to put it. And so like, I'm aware that it's not going to be perfect all the time. And my mental health and my anger is a lot more in check, because when those things come up, I'm like, yeah, you know, we've been having a pretty good run. This is our loss. Yeah. Now let's react to this and build better on it. And let's fill in that pothole. So when we come around that circle one more time, we're just cruising over it.
Yeah, just don't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
And if you do, definitely not 3 times.
Yeah. Like that's on you then.
Yeah. I've had a few of those.
Right.
But yeah, it's cool to hear on my end, just because I'm like, I don't know who in our world wound up entrepreneurial, like who's like I just haven't followed like professionally where people have gone.
Yeah.
I see people's families, like that's about it.
Right. You see some pictures.
Yeah. But I think like, I don't know, tying that back, like that's where kind of my story of like being open about all this really started. So in that time where I was in Texas, where I was like basically doing nothing, and my brother-in-law like saved my life and family basically. My wife and I went out on a date, and we posted a picture, and it was just right on a date. Like that was it. And someone commented like, your life is so perfect. And like, that was that moment where it was just like, I'm suicidal living with my sister, and like brother-in-law is floating me on everything. Like my life is not perfect, but like there's so much negativity out there. I just never wanted to like be someone who added more negativity.
Okay.
So I was like, why would I put my crap out here? Like it's for me to fix. That's it. Like, and then when that got said, it was just like, all right, like I just want to have that conversation, because everyone sees like highlights of everything, but it's like, okay, here's what's actually going on. And I did like a Facebook Live, and like it was the first one I'd ever done. I didn't know what I was doing. I cried for half of it, and it was literally just being like, life's not perfect. This is where we're at. And like, I don't think I'm the only one dealing with this, basically. Yeah. And I have dozens of messages from people just being like, hey, me too. Like, I didn't know we could talk about that. Like, okay, there's a need for this. And then I had a cousin up here who I think a lot of people know, but like Tyler Truman, he was, I don't know, the voice of a bunch of different auctions and rodeos, and he did all kinds of stuff in town. And it seemed like half of southern Utah knew the guy.
Yeah. Well, you're tied into a lot of families in town.
Yeah. There's a lot around here. But like, Tyler was one of my cousins that like I won't say we were close. We didn't hang out a ton, but if we were at the family gathering, I'm with Tyler.
Yeah.
And he took his life like not long after I had done that Facebook Live. And my mom basically called me and was just like, hey, just so you know, like Tyler's gone. And I was like, there's no way. He happened to live next door to my in-laws. So I called them. I was like, is this true? And they were like, yeah, it's happening in the backyard. I was like, oh my gosh. Like I can't fathom that. And I basically just told my family like, hey, I've got to go just write something. Like I need to be alone for a minute. And I wound up just writing a Facebook post challenging people to like stop waiting until people die to put nice things on their timeline and tell them they mean something to you. And like that was such a huge thing for me because I had to realize it myself because I do the same thing. I don't send gratitude texts all the time. Like there's a lot of just, I don't know, as I see something, I'll do it. But like I'm not super proactive.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it's Monday at 7. I need to text so-and-so.
So like it's just one of those things where it's like if someone means something to you, tell them because you don't know if they're getting in a car accident, Anyway, that post got shared literally like all over the nation. It's like I had multiple churches reach out to me saying, we read this to our congregation. Thank you so much for this. And it was just like, wow. It wasn't that it got shared a lot that like kind of lit me on fire, but it was the realization that like my voice can travel. So like, why don't I use it?
Yeah.
And like that was it was a really cool moment to me. Not cool, obviously Tyler passed away, but like cool in the way that it was just like, hey, I can make an impact and hopefully I can help prevent more of this. That's all I want.
Yeah.
And I think most people just want to know that they're not struggling alone. Like more of us are struggling than not, I would say. Our struggles just look different.
Yeah.
And like some people like money and stuff like that's not a problem. They struggle differently. Yeah. They still struggle.
That's one thing I've kind of learned. I mean, growing up when my older brothers were like middle school, my parents did okay money-wise. My dad mentally started declining when we were in 6th, 7th, middle school, somewhere in there. And I started and that's where my mindset came in that like, I'm just going to work.
Yeah.
I'm going to make 6 figures a year and I'll be set. That's all I got to do.
Yeah.
6 figures and I'm done. I can check out. And Amanda and I combined to make more than 6 figures now, right?
Yeah.
And so now I just see like, well, now there's just more problems. Not more problems. There's different problems that we deal with.
Yeah.
And I will say this, and I tell my guys at work this, I'm like, it's not all about making money, but most problems are solved faster with money.
Yes.
And so like money is definitely important.
If your basic needs are not covered, nothing else matters.
True.
So you have to at least cover that.
Yeah.
And then you can play with bonus.
Right.
And like that's kind of my outlook on it.
And so that's what I've told them. I'm like, yeah, I deal with a lot of like bigger problems than I would have if I'd have stayed at the post office 9 to 5. I mean, I instead of my 9 to 5 go home, check out, be done. I mean, I've got 3 businesses running 7 days a week.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's like, I guess I made my point. What I'm trying to say is just, that's where I got that mentality. I will say this. I want to touch on this. I think more often than not, probably, and I could be wrong, I think everybody has some sort of depression. Obviously, some are more severe than others. I mean, I watched my dad go through it for 7-8 years probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I had walked in on him multiple times attempting suicide and stopped him. And so like I knew it was a matter of time. So my parents got divorced. So everything kind of came to a head one night. I was the only one there. My dad and I were toe to toe. I've never actually told this story to more than maybe 5 people.
Yeah.
A nutshell of it, we kind of stood toe to toe. He was losing it. I mean, just it wasn't even him.
Yeah.
I mean, just seeing red, I guess is the best way to put it. And I thought he was going to hit me. Like we're sitting toe to toe and I'm thinking like, he's going to hit me. He better put me down. I mean, I'm a lot bigger than my dad.
Yeah.
And so I was like, this will get bad because no one's here to stop it.
Yeah.
And whether who wins, I don't know. But, so he ended up standing up to me. My dad's big thing was fear. Like we all feared him. And I think that when we stood toe to toe and he knew I wasn't backing down, he just broke. Like mentally he broke because he knew he had no control over me anymore.
Yeah.
And so he like even his body language, he just crumbled. And we were upstairs at our Washington house, and he ran downstairs. And I'm like, what the? Because I'm shaking.
Yeah.
I'm full of adrenaline. He runs downstairs. I called my 2 oldest brothers, and I'm like, you've got to get over here. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. Dad's losing it.
Is this like end of high school? Or like when is this?
No, I'm probably 21. I'm probably 21. I'm living at home because of all of this.
Yeah.
I had a couple houses that I'd put offers on, and one I didn't get, and the other one I retracted because I couldn't leave.
Yeah.
My mom and my little sister was there. I couldn't leave. And I got to the point where I couldn't leave the house to go to work, and I was paying for everything. I was paying the house payment, everything.
Yeah.
And I couldn't leave the house to go to work because I was scared of what my dad was going to do, whether to himself or my mom or whatever.
Yeah.
And so going through all of that, like you were saying, you had to be the man of the house, right? I'm lucky, I guess, that like I went through it at 21, because I don't think I could have handled it when I was younger.
Yeah.
And so we ended up telling him he had to move out. He moved up with his family up in Idaho, and then I kind of talked multiple times to my mom about like, hey, it's time to divorce him, and she didn't want to. Her way of saying it is she didn't want to make us a statistic of divorced kids, right? And so, but I told her, I'm like, Mom, Mike and Adam are married, we're good. We're all old. We're good. My little sister would have been 16 or 17. I mean, she still had a hard time processing it, I think, but I mean, it was time.
Yeah.
And so we talked my mom into divorce, and my dad had come back down about 6 months later, and he had texted me, and he's like, hey, I want to meet up and talk to you. And like I said with Tyson, like I didn't hate him.
Yeah.
There was no hatred involved. But I told him, I was like, I don't think that me and you talking right now would like there's nothing productive,
Yeah.
And that was the last time I ever talked to him. I mean, I told him like, hey man, I just don't think that this is going to be productive.
Yeah.
And I feel like if I explain to you how I feel, you're just going to blow up. And so that was really the way we left it. And 7 years went by. He had attempted suicide multiple times. And then he went missing, and that's when he drove his car off the cliff. But
yeah.
I think that and what I wanted to get back was, so it was probably maybe a couple months after he had left. I had taken over the house. I was renting rooms out. I was still running one of my businesses back then. I only had one. And I had so much built up because I was like, couldn't show anyone. I was scared.
Yeah.
Couldn't show anyone. I was scared for my dad, everything. And one night I was sitting down just trying to think like, why did this all happen? And I was coherent enough to like want to process it, because I'm like, this is not going to end up well if I don't get through this. And I would say maybe 10 minutes later, I'm in the corner of my bedroom crying, and I'm huddled up in the corner, sitting on my butt, hands in my, head in my knees, just crying. And my mom's I feel like she's always had a connection with all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And because she's always been good to shoot a text or a call or something when you're in the middle of it.
Right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so she just randomly calls me, and I'm like, trying to, hello, trying to sound normal. And so I answer the phone. I'm like, hey, what's up? And she's like, what's going on? And I'm like, nothing. And she's like, something's going on. What's going on? And I'm like, I'm losing it.
Yeah.
I'm losing it, Mom. Like I've been tough for so long. I just don't think I can do it anymore. And so she called my brother Adam, and they both came over and they took me to dinner, and we kind of talked about everything. And so I think I'm kind of tying a lot of things in here. I hope I'm not running on too long.
It's your podcast, dude.
Well, we went to dinner and we kind of talked about everything. And I feel like I processed, in my mind, as awful as it is to say out loud, like my dad had died that day.
Yeah.
You know, like I had never thought I'd ever talk to him again. You know, I cut him out of my life. I didn't need the drama. You know, I was dating Amanda at the time, my wife, and I just had too many things going on. I just couldn't deal with it. So I'm like, that's it, dude. I'm done. This is solved. I'm over it.
Yeah.
When Nicole had attempted suicide, I put it out there like, hey, this is where my dad did it, but I don't want any attention on this.
Yeah,
right?
I talked to you about that.
That's what I'm bringing up. And you had mentioned, you had messaged me and said, or someone had said, I'm sorry about your dad. And I said, hey, I appreciate that, but like, this ain't about me. This is about Nicole.
Yeah.
And you messaged me like almost immediately, I feel like. And you're like, hey, this might have happened to you 7 years, 8 years ago, whatever it was, but this is new for everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, you know this now, but this is new for everybody else. And I've always thought about that, because when people bring up my dad, I always say, like, I'm always like, yeah, I hadn't talked to him for a long time. We didn't have a good relationship. And because I don't know how to talk to people about it.
Yeah.
But after you had told me that, I'm like, you know what? I need to be a little more open to other people's feelings on this and how other people are going to think about it. Because my dad had a good reputation with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so I guess on the podcast, I want to thank you for reaching out to me on that, because I'd never thought about it that way.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated you for sharing it, because I'm like, I don't know if you're like me, but like when that, I'll just say like shelf kind of broke and suddenly you were just like, all right, now I'm crying in my room.
Yeah.
Has it just been a pendulum swing for you? Because like I was someone who had zero emotion, and now it's real easy to get me to cry. Like, are you still that way, or have you kind of like gone back to the middle there?
Dude, I've been a crier my whole life.
Okay.
My dad was a crier. I'm a crier. Probably all my brothers are criers.
Yeah.
But since my son's been born, I don't think I've cried once.
Really?
And I don't know why. And like, it's not that I stopped myself from
Yeah.
crying. Because my wife's not a crier.
Yeah.
And we like switched places, right? I mean, she has all the hormones and everything after the baby, but
She has an excuse.
yeah, I'm like, you're the one that always cries now. And now I never cry. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I would have cried at anything when in high school, dude. You watch Armageddon, I'm in tears,
Well, that's the thing.
bro.
Like I cry more at happy, like things that are like, yeah, like I'm proud of you kind of cry more than anything now. But I don't know. I appreciated you being open about that story, because yeah, like when I messaged you, I was like, it threw me off. And so like the thing with Nicole's, it's been really weird to me. And like, this is my own ego and conceited way of like accidentally making things about me without meaning to, and then realizing it. But like, my heart goes out to Nicole and her family, but I'm probably one of the few people in our group who's not said a word to her. And I think it was a mixture of similar feeling to you of, I don't want to make this about me, because I was already kind of known for being open about this stuff. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to pull any attention off. And also, I've sat on that freaking hill in the exact same spot. And like, when that happened, like, I don't know, like it sounded like weird chills to me, because I'm like, no, I've sat on that mountain probably within 50 feet of where she jumped.
Yeah.
And I've contemplated jumping before. And like, I was not at a point where I ever would have done it. But I like legit, like I would sit on top of that hill, because I lived in Bloomington Hills. So I would just hike up the hill. And like, while I was up there, I would be like, well, who would it affect if I just launched? Like, how would this impact the world? Would people notice? Would they care? Like, all of those things that you go through when you're just like not feeling worthy is probably the right word. Like, it just like, one of the things that I've heard that was super impactful to me was I went to a couple events for Arizona Foundation for Suicide Prevention, ASF. Yeah, whatever. It was a suicide prevention thing. And basically a mom got up there and read the note that her son left her. Wow. And it was super like it was rough, but it was also like, I see why she's reading it, because in that letter, he basically wrote to her like, Mom, I just don't want to hurt you anymore. Like, I don't want to be a burden on you anymore. Like, And you realize like people who take their lives a lot of time are just like, I'm tired of hurting everyone around me.
Yeah.
It's not even like this selfish, I just hate myself, so I'm going to do this. It's, I hate hurting you, so I don't want to hurt you further, without realizing that, like, man, you just took it way further and finalized it. There's no fixing it now. Whereas maybe we could have gotten enough help to normalize your life a little bit.
I just think when you're in that headspace, it's so hard to have that conversation with yourself, right? I mean, to be honest, I've never thought about suicide. Like, I've never got that far.
Yeah.
But I know from my dad, like I'll just share this story since we're getting into it. I don't want every podcast to end up being about my dad, but I don't remember what happened. Like I said on Tyson's podcast, his MO was get mad, slam the door, pill out, leave.
Yeah.
So we had lived in a split level house. And so like right when you came in the front door, you went upstairs or downstairs. So it made a perfect place for all the kids to sit at the bottom of the stairs and listen to what's going on upstairs, right?
Yeah. For better or worse.
Yeah. And so this time my dad comes home. It's, 11, midnight, something like that. And Jason and I are sitting at the bottom of Jason's my older brother. He's 2 years older than me. We're sitting at the bottom of the stairs. And we're kind of looking at each other like, are you going to go up there? Are you going to go up there? You know? And so Jason goes upstairs and he's kind of talking to him. Hey man, what's going on? Tell me, talk to me. And my dad just starts like kind of crying, yelling. And he says, basically what you're kind of getting at, he's saying it would be easier if I was gone.
Yeah.
It'd be so much easier for all you guys if I was gone. And I'm sitting at the bottom of the stairs, like kind of crying, you know, cause I'm like, dude, you don't even get it. Like, this may not be the best way to say it, and I'm not great with word choice sometimes, but I'm like, that's so selfish.
Yeah.
You know, that like you honestly think it'd be easier for all of us, you know? And this is when my dad and I still had a good relationship.
Yeah.
You know? And so all of a sudden I hear him start to like kind of bang around the kitchen, and I didn't know what was going on. So I ran up there and they're like wrestling. And instincts. I'm like I said, I'm quite a bit bigger than my dad. So I grabbed him like from the back, I restrained him, and we hit the ground. And I had both of his arms locked up, both of his legs locked up, and I didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, Jason's like digging in his mouth, and he's like, I can kind of see around my dad's head, and he's got his whole hand in his mouth, and he's just digging pills out of his mouth. And the whole time he's like, no, just let me do it. Just let me do it. Just let me do it. And I think that's probably the first time I kind of lost respect for him a little bit. Cause I'm like, it's not even about us now. Like, this is about you. And that's how I felt.
Yeah.
You know? And so anyway, it ended up being a big, like my mom came out, she called the police.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
You can't play that one down, dude.
I just didn't know how far it should go down the story, but like police showed up, fire department showed up, they took him to the hospital. It was like a big deal after that. But I just remember thinking like, this is so selfish of you.
Yeah.
But I've had one time in my life that, well, I'm sure I had more than this. The biggest time I felt depression in my life, I was making decent money. Amanda was making good money. She was a nurse going through her master's program. Money was not an issue. Let's just put it. We did not have money struggles whatsoever. I was working at the post office, had a good job. I liked everyone I worked with. And one day I just came home, dude, and it was like, the best way I can explain it is everything was just slow motion to me. Or like
numb, like you couldn't feel anything?
More like there was just like a cloud.
Okay.
Like I just felt like, not like nothing mattered, but I'm just like, if I just sat here all day, there would be no consequence to it. And it was like a Saturday, Sunday, I didn't work, something like that, you know? And I'd probably gone on like a week like that. And I still got up, still went to work, still did everything, right? Put your face on, didn't let anyone know you're struggling, right? And I remember calling my mom one night and I'm just like, I've never felt like this before. You know, like I was sad when I broke up with girls or they broke up with me or whatever, but not this.
Yeah.
And I know I was struggling. My mom, and so she wanted to step in, right? Like our family history. And
Yep.
so she's trying to help. And I'm like, no, I can figure this out. And I'm not even sure if I've ever told my wife about this, but I remember ironically, like we go to church and I'm sitting in church and we're like right in the middle of the pews. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Like, I just want to go home. I'm tired, and I just kept telling myself, I'm just tired. Like, I feel like this because I'm tired. I'm working a lot. And it just hit me like, what do you have to be depressed about? I'm like, I'm married to my dream girl. We make decent money. So, and in my mind, like that was the big stressor in life, right? Because that's how I grew up. And I remember I just like started singing this. I think we were in the middle of a song and I just started singing the song, and it felt like, and this is not a religious thing, but it just felt like the whole thing just got lifted. And like the next day I called my mom and I'm like, I feel good.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if that was depression, which I believe it was now, but in the time I'm like, I feel like I just like kind of conquered it. And I'm not saying I'll never struggle with it again. I mean, I'm an entrepreneur, 3 businesses. It's bound to happen again.
You're going to run into a few snags along the way here.
Right. But I don't know. I mean, let me turn it back to you then. So when you were going through that, what did it feel like to you? I'm just trying to tie this to people that are listening that maybe not sure if it was.
Like the way that you just said, like on paper, life was good. I had that. Yeah. Like when I hit my like worst, I had a corporate job paying close to $80K, taking care of my car, like doing like, I made more money than each of my parents. Mm-hmm. So as far as I was concerned, I was winning. Yeah. Like it was done, had the house, like had the wife, 2 kids, anything I could want on paper. We're good. Like we checked all the boxes.
Perfect life, right?
We've done it. And like, I don't even know if it was like lack of, I mean, it is, but it's not like I didn't feel like I was fulfilled. It's not that kind of a thing. Obviously it kind of is if you break it down, but like I didn't feel like I was missing that stuff. I just didn't feel proud of me for anything. Like I just, no matter what I did, like I did have not, and maybe that, I don't know, I'm processing things as we go too,
same thing, man.
But like, as we were talking about like, would my family be better off without me? I've had that thought forever. And I think it is because having gone through what I did at such a young age, I have this like panic of like, what if I wake up and my wife has taken my kids and left?
Yeah.
What would, like, that is this inevitable fear that I legitimately live with. And like, it's one of those things where like they say like, don't attract things in your life. Like I'm not trying to like
law of attraction
play out that scenario so I can have a plan B like that. I don't want a plan B for this one. Like this is the only option,
burn the boats.
But it legitimately still like, it makes it no less scary, And I think that's the thing is like when everything was going right was the time that I was like, I don't feel good. Why? And like, I don't know. I have different theories on that now, but like it just because everything looks good doesn't mean anything. And just because like, I don't know, like my headspace I thought was good. I was a high functioning person who was like, just didn't let everyone know that like, oh, I freaking hate everything. And like, I don't know why I hate everything, but like nothing matters to me.
Yeah.
And like genuinely having like I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or what, of just being like, my wife would be happier with someone else. My kids would be happier if they had a better dad. Like my job will literally replace me tomorrow. And they would. They were a corporate job. That didn't matter.
Sure. Sure.
So it was all of those things like stacking up with someone who just like always struggled to be confident and always struggled to be like, I don't know, like step into like things that I actually thought. Like I've always had like a streak of, I would say like somewhat rebelliousness, meaning like I always kind of did things my own way. But if we were doing things as a group, I very much just fell in line and just like, let's just keep the peace. And I'm sick of fighting. Like there's enough other crap going on. But through that, like I realized like a lot of times things that I thought I didn't express, and like I think that hindered me a bit, like it's just one of those things where like as I started to figure out like what do I believe and what do like I just started being more honest about like, okay, like I believe in this, I don't believe in this. I believe in this, I don't believe in this. And like I don't think everything's depression, for the record. Like I like Mitch Hancock and I talked about it one time, and he talked about how sometimes people have depressive episodes. It doesn't mean you suffer from depression. And like I go back and forth. I'm like, well, do I have depression or do I just have like depressive episode? Like I don't know. And like I got diagnosed when I was a kid as like ADHD and like all, you name it. Like we played that game. But I also was like given a pill bottle and was like, take these, you'll start getting better grades. And like really I just didn't care. So like all my homework was done. It was in the backpack. I just didn't turn it in because I didn't care. So like a month or two later, look, Danny's grades are up. It's working. And I handed back the pill bottle. Like I don't need that. But like I think that comes from like, so my dad, and like, I haven't talked through all the things with my dad, and he's still here. So like I'll be careful on that. Love you, Dad. We're still good, but I have things that I've recognized.
You're progressing.
Yeah, but like I think it was one of those things where like on our end, it was never a true like physical thing like that. But I had a moment just like you, where like in our downstairs was like our kitchen, and I was the only bedroom downstairs. Everyone else's bedrooms were upstairs. Okay. So like there was a fight happening outside of my bedroom that was just screaming, and me being like, I don't know, I was a big dude in high school.
Yeah.
So like
still are.
I still am. That's true. But essentially like I heard that fighting, and I had to go through that in my head of like, do I have to go stop this right now? Because I know I'm big enough to take out my dad if I need to. Like I'm no longer afraid of my dad.
Yeah.
But like if I go out and hit my dad, is that relationship done forever? And is that what I want right now? Because at like 17, forever is a long freaking time.
Yeah.
So I very much had to like walk through that. And I just gave it enough time that eventually my dad's thing was go to his room and slam the door. All right. He's going to go read.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's going to do. But like he's upstairs. We're all here. Calmness, you know? And like me and my dad, like we have a decent relationship now. I don't talk to many people very often if I have to get on the phone with you because, sorry, I don't do phones very often. So like we talk mainly because like I have grandkids that I don't try to hide from him. Yeah. Like let's keep everything going and family. But like, I don't know. All that to say, like looking at the way that like kind of your story played out and like mine, like there are similarities there.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, I don't know if I go back and forth with whether or not I want to claim like I have depression because I think according to all the things I've read, yeah, I probably do. But like even talking about it like this, I've told this story before. But like essentially, you know how people say like it's all the story you tell yourself?
Yep.
I never took that literal before. So when things were like tanking for me and I had already like lost everything, we're living in Texas, right? I didn't want to live in Texas. I wanted to go back to Arizona. Like I didn't want to rebuild in Texas. I wanted to go home. And Vivint was starting a team back here down where I am, Arizona. In Phoenix. And essentially I was good enough that they knew like if he's having good days, he's a great person to have on the team. If he's having bad days, no sales, like horror cancer to the team. Okay. Because it was fluctuating, but I knew they were going to start a team back here in Arizona. And I was like, hey, let me come help because at least that would get me here. I could be apart from the family for a little while, earn enough money, bring them back. Yeah. And I wound up being apart from them from November 1st to like December 23rd. Like it was like just that perfect, like right before Christmas. But I came back up here or to Arizona and we were doing trips from Arizona to California. And I had a guy named Justin Oxford on my team and I drove out with him and we had a 5-6 hour drive getting out where we were going. And he and I had always been friends, but we never had like one-on-one time. It was always just like in a group. We never talked deep. And he started asking me like, how did you get in this situation? How is it like, because he knew what was going on. I was very open about it. And he was like, well, tell me about this. So I told him, and I actually gave him like step by step, like this happened and this happened, this led to this. And essentially he was like, you sound like you've told that before. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, no, like you're like accentuating parts in like a way that like you're delivering this story. Like you've told this before. And I was like, oh, like you're right. Like I'm living into this reality that I'm saying is my reality, instead of deciding to just like choose to do things differently. And that doesn't mean like you can choose to not be depressed.
Yeah.
But you can choose your actions day to day and how you're going to like let the world impact you versus you're going to impact it. You know?
Love that. Yeah.
But it was really cool because like I'd never thought of it literally. Like, what story are you saying in your head? And I was getting up and saying, I'm a depressed person who can't get his shit together and is just struggling in life.
I'll have good days and I'll have bad days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like every day, like that's what I'm telling myself. And it's just one of those like, oh, okay. So like for a while, I did not say I'm someone who is depressed. I didn't want to put that on myself, even though I may still struggle with those same things. And I very much do.
Yeah.
Like in the last month, I've had times of just like, why do things suck? And they don't suck like at all. Like my life is good, dude. Like I can't complain, but like I hit periods of just like, I am numb for days. And like I'm very blessed to have a patient wife and kids who I'm open with everything about, to the point where I can just tell them like, hey guys, I'm having one of my days. Like, can we just chill? Like a little less climbing on dad, like, and it's just one of those things where it's hard because like, if you know, like love languages, like my kids and my wife, when they're not feeling good, they want physical touch. They want a hug. They want these things. And like, for me, I'm like, everyone get away.
Hey, leave me alone.
And it's hard because it's like, well, how do they comfort me if they can't hug me? And like, how do I comfort them if I don't want to touch? And like, it's like a weird thing that like, you don't think about that. Like as a dad, like, well, of course I'm going to want to hug my kids. I do, but it's like, I hit these moments where I'm like, I'm way less likely to accept a hug from my wife, which sounds crazy, but it's a boundary that we've just kind of set that like in these times, I'm happy to like be loved and have, like, but like, I just kind of want to sit,
That's
you know?
interesting. Yeah.
And like, it's a weird thing that like we're having to figure out and dial in, but like, that's one of the things that we've come to is just like, for my own sanity, I have moments where I just don't want to be touched. Like I just want to be able to like be in my feelings, and like I'm just trying to shorten those times.
Yeah.
So instead of allowing a whole day to just be like blah,
Well, because you're
right.
aware of it.
Yeah.
And so it's like
That's the hard part.
like, yeah, like controlling it's not the right word, but you're trying to navigate it while you're in it because you're aware of it.
I'm trying to honor it.
Okay.
And move past it.
Sure.
And acknowledge that like it is happening. Like I do feel this. Is there anything I did that would have like caused this one to happen?
Yeah.
You know, or like, is there anything that I've done in the past that caused me to snap out of it? What does that look like? And like, how do I actually, and like, I think that's one of the things is me and you like getting to talk about these things. We will end up recognizing like patterns or things that happen that we wouldn't have just thought about in general. And I don't know, like one of the most therapeutic things I ever did was that first Facebook Live when I was like, hey, this is what I'm going through. I can't tell you the freaking weight that dropped off my shoulders, like for real. Like, and it was just like, there's no facade. There's absolutely like, I don't know. I've become a person who like, if something's on my mind, I might think it through for a week before I say it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say it. It's going to come out. And I hope I can say things in a way that like, they're not offensive to people or anything like that. But it's just like, I know there's enough people in my situation that they want someone to speak because I want someone to speak.
Yeah.
And if no one's going to freaking speak, like, all right, fine, I'll speak. Like, I'm just trying to move that way.
I've been there multiple times where I'm like I say, like, I haven't been down that road where I've been on the cliff or I haven't held that gun or I haven't done any of that stuff. But there's still, in every situation that someone's felt like my dad, there's people that have felt like me. Mm-hmm. And so that's the story I try to tell is like, hey, I mean, we're going through it too, you know, like Dax, your kid, one day he might have a talk with someone and be like, yeah, dude, we had this understanding with my dad. And that's how we all coexisted. Yeah. And that's how all this works. I never had that. Like, I never had anyone explain any of it to me.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know what I mean?
I don't think anyone talked in our, like,
No.
it's weird. We're becoming the old people. Like,
I
when I was
know, dude.
young.
It's sad. I got a kid working for me. I'm twice his age.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things. But I think it's one of those where in my family, like, you didn't talk about religion. You didn't talk about politics. You basically didn't talk about feelings. And, like, it was just one of those things that was like, I think there are elements of, like, man up, be a man that are, like, necessary. Like, and whoever you are, if you're falling into that role, there's things you have to do to fulfill that. Like, I think that's real. Also, I think the walk it off attitude and, like, some of the stuff that comes along with that is complete BS. Like, the boys don't cry.
Yeah.
Men don't cry.
Sure.
Like no. Like, I'm waterworks this last half decade, you know, like, legitimately. And it's just, it's learning to acknowledge that, like, no, those are all part of being a man.
Yeah.
So how do I give that to my kid in that way to where it's like, I'm not going to hide this from you. Like, it's so freaking hard to hide things from kids. Like, how old are your kids at this point?
I mean, I've just got one that's 8 months.
Okay.
So,
in my head, you had one older one too. So,
no, not
but
that
like,
I know of.
we'll say you just have that one. Thanks, Amanda. Sorry. But I think it's one of those that, like, once you have a kid that's, like, looking to you, they're around you constantly.
Yeah.
They know when you're lying, just like you know when they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you can get away with white lies. Like, no, like, this candy bar's gone. And it is gone.
Santa
it's just
Claus.
gone for you. Yeah. Like, I put it over there. Like, that kind of thing still works. But, like, our kids are freaking sensitive, dude. Like, if I'm off and, like, I'm legitimately, like, I'm angry or, like, whatever's happening, even if I've not even become aware of it yet, like, my kids, kind of like how your mom just happens to send a thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, my daughter will just make a homemade card and just come leave it on my desk. And it's just like, oh, okay. That was my sign of, like, snap out of it.
I'm seeing it.
Life is good. Let's shut the computer for a minute and just go, like, be with the family for 30 minutes. And, like, we'll restart after that.
I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got an example of kind of that, not being able to show any of that stuff. I text my brothers, and this just popped in my mind, so I figured I'd share it, but it's, I don't know, it could be 6 months now. I don't know, all my days run together, but I text all three of my older brothers and my mom, my little sister. I text everyone. I just said, hey, I love you. Love you. Every one of my brothers, well, I think Adam texts me, you good? You know?
Yeah.
and I'm like, I can't even just get I love you back, you know?
Sadly, that would have been my first thought too.
Right.
It's just
though.
like, oh wait, what are you doing?
Yeah,
like,
what's happening?
Is this a goodbye? I love you. Like, that
right, because it was out of the blue, you know? And then I think Jason and Mike both called me, and they were like, what's going on? Nothing, dude. Just thought I'd tell you I love you, bro.
Like that.
Yeah. And so I'm like going back to my mom, I'm like, man, maybe I need to be that person. Because I think about it all the time. And my mom, I feel like I owe my mom everything. Everything that she went through, us growing up. I mean, I had no idea at the time, but I do now because I was being her for, you know, a year, you know. But I just feel like she's so in tune with all of us. And I get these feelings of saying, like, hey, man, how's today going? My oldest brother, love him to death. I've spent more time with him in the last 5 years than I have the rest of my life, or my earlier life.
Yeah.
And he's a vet. He did a tour in Iraq. Him and Adam, Mike and Adam, were both in a car accident when they were just out of high school that a girl died. Mike was driving. I know that messed with them a lot. And he's been through all of these things. And he's probably one of the best dudes I know. Like, if you really know him, he's got the best heart out of anyone I've ever met.
Yeah.
And with the struggles that he goes through, not saying I think he's suicidal or anything, but I'm just like, hey, man, like, love you, bro. You know, like, thanks for being around.
Yeah.
Like, we went up to Duck Creek and went camping, and he came with us, and I had a blast with him. Went fishing with him. And I feel like that almost needs to be said more to everybody.
Definitely.
And I've got a list on Mother's Day and Father's Day of people that were just a part of my life that I send out. Hey, happy Mother's Day. Hey, happy Father's Day.
Yeah.
And it may not even mean anything to any of them, but it means something to me, you know. But going back to being vulnerable, I wish that And I hope that Will's my son. I hope that he can grow up knowing that it's okay to feel like that. And I hope that I can instill that in him of like, you don't have to be tough guy all the time, like we all thought we did. Right.
Yeah.
And it sounds like Dax is going to be the same way.
Yeah. He's like me. Like when I was a kid, like I was super sensitive, and then I flipped that switch off and just didn't tell people. I was still super sensitive, for the record.
Yeah.
Like it didn't mean I didn't feel things later. It just meant you were not allowed to know that I felt things.
You were unaware.
Yeah. You did not know that I felt things. But I mean, seeing him, like he's one of those kids that's like very stereotypical boy attributes. He's incredibly rough with everything. He breaks stuff. He takes things apart. He puts them back together. Like he hits all those stereotypes.
Uh-huh.
And in that same breath, like I can turn and raise my voice at him and he will cry. And I'm like, oh shoot. Like I don't want to be that dad. B, it wasn't that big a deal. Like how do I now put things in perspective? Because like, I would say I was pretty calm, like through high school and all that. But like I had a really bad temper, but I was never around people enough for them to know that.
No one knew it.
Yeah. But like I had a horrible temper from, I don't know, just childhood. And like that was how I expressed myself, is like my getting anger out was like, I play football. I'm literally allowed to hit people.
Yeah.
So like
as hard as I can.
So like we're going to play that game. I lift weights 5 days a week and I work 40 hours a week or close to it most. Like my high school's full.
Yeah.
I don't have time to let all that out. And like coming forward, like it's kind of, you mentioned earlier, like depression and how like almost like putting my depression against your depression. And like, I wish we could talk about it in a way and like let people know, like, it's not a competition.
No.
Just because you went through worse crap than I did or vice versa, they both suck.
Yeah.
Like that's it.
Like I'm not bragging about any of it.
No, like these are things that like I laugh that your brothers would immediately think to call you.
Yeah.
Because we've been through similar traumas is really what it is. And like, that's my first, like I barely talk to my brother Josh. He's up here in St. George. But like, usually if we talk to each other, it's either like me sending him something because he's the only skateboarding person I know where I'm like, dude, this was rad. Like, look at this. I get no response. But like, if he calls me out of the blue, something's going on and we're good, but like, we just don't feel the need to talk all the time.
Yeah.
If I get something from him, knowing where we've both been, like what's going on? Like, are you good? Are you about to do something stupid? Like, do I have to leave and come to you immediately? Like, what's going on? And I think like I'm sure that's where your brothers' minds were too.
And I'm glad that they were. I mean, I'm glad that they did think like, hey, I need to reach out immediately back to him. I just kind of thought it was like, man, maybe I need to say this more. They think when I say that, like something bad's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. That comes through just being normalized with you and like moving forward. Like it's really like all you can do in that. But I think I try to do that with my kids are Dax and Nevaeh. Dax is 9, Nevaeh is 11. Mm-hmm. And like, I don't know, man, trying to go from the guy who like showed zero affection in high school, and like half of high school didn't know that like I've been with my wife, like we've been boyfriend, girlfriend dating since like 15, 16. Mm-hmm. So like all through high school, I had someone who I was dating. Most of school didn't know that because like Brianne still hates me for not being someone who was like for PDA back in the day.
Yeah.
But like she switched over to from Dixie to go to school with me. And then like switched into one of my classes. And then I realized I failed physics. So I had to bail on that class and switch to physics. You know, like it was one of those things where like Brianne was there with me through high school that last year.
Yeah.
No one knew it. So it was just like, I don't know. I've never been someone to publicly show affection. I've always had a temper. All of those things changed when I had kids. Like suddenly it just like, oh, okay. Like I get what people say. Like, your capacity to love, to feel joy, like all of those things for me, it wasn't immediate, but it all expanded and I was able to do those things. And again, like those little lessons, like my son who's like rough and tumble, but if I say the wrong thing, he cries. Okay, like how do I have to be as a human to not screw up my kids, to go through some of the same things that I went through?
Yeah.
You know, and like that aspect has made me a better salesman, business person, you name it. Like I've just had to learn to like if I can convey a message simple enough that my little kids get it, good. Like, I don't know, being a dad's changed me in a lot of ways.
See, I feel like I'm only 8 months in, and I'm like, I love Will.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I probably would have been okay not ever having kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I just felt like, you know, we've got the world ahead of us, and we're ready to conquer it, you know. Yeah. And Amanda and I are both extremely busy. And, I mean, she's a nurse in the ER, a nurse practitioner in the ER. She's on call. She's on call like every fourth weekend or so once a month. Then she's on call like one day a week, and she does her 40 hours plus, you know. And then I'm running 3 businesses. I've got a retail store. I'm like, where do we fit a kid into all this? With all that said, not wanting to have a kid, I think that's deep from my dad.
Yeah.
Because like, I don't want to be that same person to him that my dad was to me. And I had a great childhood. Don't get me wrong. Up until, you know, my dad started kind of declining mentally.
Yeah.
Great sports. He was always there coaching. He was, you know, helping with homework. He was always there. So I don't want to paint him in a bad light. It's just, he had his own stuff he was dealing with. Right. But with Will, I'm trying to prepare myself to be aware of all of this stuff for when he is, I don't know how old they are when they start realizing these things, because I only have an 8-month-old, but like, to be aware of these things, to explain to him, dude, I'm not perfect. Dude, I'm gonna mess up.
Yeah.
What are you going through? This is what I went through. This is still your life. You still have to make your own decisions, but, you know, let me help you, guide you through some of it.
Well, how many of us thought all the adults around us like had everything together?
Perfect.
Like, everyone's lives are good. Yeah. And like that now, like, I laugh because like I've gone to like different teacher conventions and like different things like that, doing different filming things. And like, I'm seeing all these teachers who now I realize I'm like, oh, I'm older than a lot of people coming out of college, the majority, right. I would say at this point. So like, I'm seeing these people go in as teachers, and I'm seeing them at like parties and things. And I'm like, these people, and like not but like corporate parties, where like drinks are free. And like, you're seeing these people let loose. And I was just like, how many of and like, maybe it was different, like St. George, Pineview.
St. George, right.
But like, how many of my teachers showed up like hungover? And I like had no idea back in the day, because I'm just like, they wouldn't do that. Like, they're responsible adults. And I was like, no, they're figuring it out just like everyone else. But like, if I can infuse a little bit of that in my kids to just understand that like, we're figuring it out too. So like, if I screw this up and I yell at you or I do something, like, just know you're my first experiment at being a dad.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry. I'm going to learn. We're going to go through some of these trials together. And like, hopefully I don't screw this up too bad. But I'm like, I also started when like, I don't know if you're like me. I never liked kids until I had my own. Like, when people would be like, you want to hold my baby? Like, no, same. It's your freaking baby.
Yeah,
like,
same.
What am I going to do with your baby?
I'm like, I'll play with him when he's like 9.
Yeah. But like, until I had my own, but like, dude, again, we checked those boxes so quick because like, I didn't care to go on a mission. Like, it was something I knew I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
And like, so I was 19, Brianne was 18. Her parents didn't allow her to live at home while dating me. So we just got married. Now we live together. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, and like, that was just one of those things where it was like, okay, like, we'll work around that. But like, by 18 and 19, we were married. By 19 and 20, we had our first kid.
Right.
2 years later, we had our second kid. And it was like, okay, like now we're sitting in that weird spot of like, now a lot of the people we're in the world of, like, they're starting to have kids.
Mm-hmm.
They're mid 30s, early 40s. And it's like, are we done? Like, are we going to have a kid with these people?
Yeah.
Or are we going to be like empty nesters at like 40?
Dude, that sounds nice.
Which and it goes back and forth because like, neither of us would mind having another kid. We don't know if we do or don't want, but like, I can see a world where I'm done.
Yeah.
And like, we've never been entrepreneurs till like August 6th will be 2 years.
That's awesome.
And like, we're learning, like, oh my gosh, like, you can think so much bigger. Like, there's so many cool opportunities out there.
Yeah.
And like, do I want to have another child, or do I want to just like put all my energy into this? because I'm like, I'm still, dude, I'm figuring out entrepreneurship. Like
Well,
I'm not organized.
That's what I
so
was
like,
just
I
gonna
don't
say.
have balance between kid time, wife time, business time. And she's part of the business now too.
Yeah.
So even Danny wife time gets screwed up because we talk about business time. And it's like, there's no real way to truly separate them because we're in the same business. But trying to figure out that balance is like, I do not have my things together.
Yeah.
And I'm learning.
Well, and I to touch on that, a lot of people that I know that are successful and have kids, that's the number one thing I ask them, because I'm terrified of that, of not being there enough.
Yeah.
Because I want to drive my businesses forward. And so I always ask them, like, what's the balance? How does this work? Are you just 110 at home and you're 110 at work? Or like, how does this, I don't have the energy for that, but maybe someone does. And every one of them are trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like, there's no answer to any of this. And it's all different, right? Yeah. I mean, like someone else's wife, my wife, she doesn't need a ton of attention.
Yeah.
I mean, she's very independent. Like my friends, we always make fun of each other because if we were all out, I'm thinking like someone had a bachelor party or something and we went out shooting and did a bonfire.
Yeah.
Everyone's wife's blowing them up. Hey, when you can be home? You guys almost done? And half of them had kids, so I get it. But they're like, hey, what's all going on? And I'm sitting here like checking my phone, dude. I'm like, is my phone dead? I don't have one text.
Yeah.
You know, like I get home at midnight, Amanda's been asleep for 2 hours.
Yeah. Well, you both operated independently even when you were together. So like you had that kind of built in.
Right.
I think it's something we've had to, I don't know, we've had to learn that. And like, so like one of my mentors is a guy named Kyle Depius. He runs the Reaching Beyond podcast. And like he runs these insane experiences where he has a big thing around like work-life rhythm.
Okay.
And it's basically that like balance is unachievable. That's a fake thing. But like there's seasons to things, meaning like if I can communicate to my family really well that for the next 90 days, I'm not going to be at all the things. I'm going to be in complete run mode. But I have to be a man of my word, following up on like, if you give me this 90 days to run, I will achieve this, 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 and this, and it will be worth it. And then we'll take the next 30 days and be heavy on like family side, like as an example, you know? And it's kind of just like, how do I just communicate that I'm like, I have times where I'm like, I have to be working 20 hours today. Yeah. Like it sucks, but like, this is where we're to. I'm sorry. We'll move kid late night to tomorrow. Like this isn't because like, I don't know. It's such a hard conversation within that. Cause I'm like, how do I not hurt a kid's feeling? And all they want to do is be like, no, it's okay, Dad. And I'm like, oh, is it okay though? Yeah. Like I
know you're saying that.
Yeah, you're saying that because you know that I need this and like you're trying to help me. But like, I don't know. I think it's more about like when I'm at home. Mm-hmm. And it's, again, that got convoluted too because this entire last year, my kids were home. Yeah. Like they couldn't go to school.
Right.
So like they were home. I was home. My wife was home. And it was just like, and in the beginning of the pandemic, like we were in a 1-bedroom apartment because my wife, again, Manhattan lady, wants to live minimalist. Lady. So like we had the kids in the bedroom. We had like a Murphy bed and like it was dope. Like everything was good until everyone was home 24/7. I was like, okay, we got to get a house. Yeah. Like this isn't gonna work for much longer. And then like, I don't know. We've been very good about that to like now again, it's like if it's work hours, laptop's open, I'm in here, please only come in if you like really need me. And like if it's not work hours, laptop's closed, phone stays in there because otherwise I'm on it. It does like I suck.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, like it comes with me, but like as far as balance, like I don't think that goes. It's just knowing that like even if you're not talking the long term of like give me 90 days, then I'll give you 30 and like kind of stuff, it's like please give me 6 hours to just do this. Yeah. And then at the end of the night, I'll disconnect. I'll give you 6 hours of your own, like whatever, and then like I'll do more work once you go to bed.
No, I like that.
That's closer to a realistic look for me in this moment.
Yeah. Well, I've changed a lot of things in the last year. Well, we were building our house, and so I was work, mailer out, store, house. I mean, I was nailing out everything every day. And now that the house is done, Will's here, I'm starting to get most of the jobs to where I don't have to be there and on them every day. Yeah. And I'll do the same thing. Like someone will call me and it's 7:30. And I'm like, oh, dude, I clocked out. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're calling the wrong guy, you know?
Yeah.
And I've tried, and I mean, I'm not a laptop type guy, but my phone's always on me.
Yeah.
And so when I'm with Will and we're just hanging out morning, night, whatever it is, like I've made it a point not to give it to him for one, but like it's in my pocket or it's out of the way. Like I'm rarely on my phone when I'm around him.
Yeah.
Because it's like, even if he's just sitting on the ground playing with toys and I'm just sitting there, you know, like I try not to, even when he looks at me, he knows my focus is on him.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't even know if he's comprehending any of that, but that's what it is in my mind.
I think more than you think, though.
Yeah.
Like that would be my assumption, is just not that he understands what you're doing or what you're not doing, but he knows he has your attention.
Yeah.
That's 90% of the battle.
And it's a hard thing for me to pull work back. And so I'm trying to just like little bits at a time. So for me, I'm like, okay, I need to shut down when I'm home. Okay, he might not understand all of this, but in a year, it's going to be a lot harder to shut it down in a year than if I start trying to do it now. That's my mentality going into it. But I like what you're saying where, hey, I'm going to hit it hard this amount of time, you know, this amount of times for you guys. That's something I can definitely work on because I'm 120 at work all the time.
Yeah.
And like I said, the Wind Rivers trip that my wife's on right now, like I'm supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got work. I can't, you know?
My family came up here for a 3-day weekend and it was just like, I got asked to do a job back there. And I was like, I'm not turning that down. I'll fly up Sunday. So I'm like, I get that. But I think it's more communication than anything.
Yeah.
And like, that's the biggest thing I'm learning is like times in my marriage where I've sucked at communicating. Go figure. Those are hard times in my marriage.
Right.
You know? And like with my kids, they won't be offended if I have to bump something a few hours or something like that. They'll be offended if I bring it to them at the last minute. And then I'm like, sorry, we can't do this.
I'm out. Yeah.
But if at like the beginning of the day, I know what my calendar looks like. Hey guys, like this and this come up. And I can propose a plan to them saying like, we're going to move it here from here. And like, this is why. Are you okay with that? And I really will ask, like, are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Because if they are, that's the plan. If they're not, okay, now we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But like, if I can over communicate that ahead of time, we're golden. If I wait till the last minute, it's not so good. So it really is that like proactive communication.
That's hard though.
Yeah. But it's the same thing I'm trying to figure out on like the business side too. You know, is like, how do I reach out to my clients and notify them of problems before they figure out about them on their own?
Sure.
You know that. Like proactively solve those things because they're going to go way better if you just own things and move forward than like, I kind of screwed that up. I didn't think you'd notice. Like they're going to freaking notice. Like, but question for you in terms of like the entrepreneurship side. So you've kind of always, that's how your brain has been geared, I'll say. Where did you, like, have you always been someone who was into like personal development and things like that? Or is that something that you learned later? Because I've heard you say that you listen to like Jocko and different people in that world. So that I call personal development. But like, was that always a thing or is that something you learned later?
That was not always a thing. I'm not a reader. And I try to be better at it, but I'm not a reader. When I started doing holsters, well, not when I started, when I was probably 3 years in, and Amanda was starting her master's program, we both would work all day. And then we'd come home at night. She'd go right into her office and she would do homework or studying or whatever. I don't know, school stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so I would go downstairs where we had all the holster stuff set up where I would build holsters all night. And honestly, I just kind of got bored. And I was like, I need to start listening to something. And then Eric Thomas was the first person I ever listened to. Yeah. You went to a conference with him in it, right?
Yeah, he came to one of the Vivint things. Like it was pretty rad, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, so he was the first person that I ever started listening to. And my brother had sent me the, gosh, now I'm going to butcher it. I've only heard it 1,000,000 times. You got to want it more than you want to breathe.
Yeah.
Is that what the words are?
I don't know.
I know, dude.
I'm gonna fumble it with you because you put it on the spot. But anyway, like when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe.
That's the one.
That was the one.
And so he sent that to me, and it was probably a year later. I was like, I wonder what that one was, because I'm like, I don't want to sit down here and do holsters. I'm like, I already worked 10 hours. I'm like, I don't want to be down here doing this for the next 5. And so I was like, I need to listen to something. So I put that on. Well, then now YouTube, right? It just kind of puts you to the next one and puts you to the next one. And listening to him, I mean, it probably got me through like a year and a half of holsters and working.
Yeah.
And then I would do my mail routes, whether I was working for the post office or my contract routes at whatever point in time. And I would download a lot of those and listen to them. And so I just kind of got into it because like working 18 hours a day ain't easy.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, right?
Yeah.
And so I almost needed something coming into hour 12, hour 13 to like get me through it, and something that I could relate to. And I think Eric Thomas did that for me. Because I'm not an educated person.
Yeah.
I couldn't wait to be done with high school. I had no business being in college, And so I think listening to him, he kind of brought it down to my level. And anyone that's listened to him, I think, would understand that. I'm not dogging him at all. I mean, that's something he's great at.
Yeah.
And listening to him, and then it was kind of like just talks that people had patched together, right? And so there would be all kinds of different people in there, Tony Robbins, everything. But then someone was like, you don't listen to podcasts all this time on the routes and all this time you don't listen to podcasts. So Joe Rogan was kind of my first thing into podcasts.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of them. I was like, dude, you and your comedian buddy are great, but like, it just didn't interest me.
Yeah.
And then I would listen to some with like Joe Dispenza, and I'm like, and he's talking about how the brain works and how it turns into personalities and does all this stuff. And I'm like, holy crap.
It's the biggest thing, trying to attempt to explain Joe Rogan to my wife, where I'm like, he talks about like this, and this, but like, don't listen to this episode because you won't like what they said in this episode. It's just comedians having fun. And like, she's like, they're getting high. I'm like, I know, just
I'm aware.
Push past that and like, look at like what this is saying. And it's just like, you know how that goes.
Well, and then Jocko, I started listening to a lot of Jocko, mainly because I just needed something else.
Yeah.
And even the Eric Thomas podcast stuff, I never got into.
Yeah.
But to this day, I still listen to some of those speeches that he does.
Yeah.
So I kind of just got into it and really, really, really enjoyed it, I guess, to answer your question. But I've not always done it. Probably the last.
Do you look at it as like
years.
motivation, or like do you also have other ones that you specifically go to for like business mentorship?
I don't believe in motivation the way a lot of people do.
Yeah.
I believe in being motivated for the next 3 hours. I don't believe in being motivated.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like a lot of people will be like, I'm going to listen to this and I'm going to kill it for the rest of the week. And I'm like, I don't believe that's how motivation works.
I went to a Tony Robbins event and I was not motivated 48 hours later because it still was an internal thing that I had not fixed.
Exactly. And so I listened to the motivated stuff when I need it right now. I'm like, oh, dude, I'm getting tired. I'm slowing down. I'm driving to Provo to pick up safes. I need to listen to something to keep going. That kind of thing. I'll throw it on. I listen to a lot of the business stuff because, again, I feel like, I didn't take college classes to do any of this.
Yeah.
I've had my brother Adam that I've reached out to 1,000 times. I'm starting to get into some more circles where I've reached out to a lot of other people, but that's only the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of that stuff I was pulling off of Gary Vee. I was pulling off of, like one of the best books I ever read was Larry H. Miller's autobiography. And so I actually did read that book. It's like one of the 6th I've read my whole life.
Like physically sat and read
it.
Yeah.
And so that's when I kind of was like, okay, I know how to work. I'll outwork anybody. That's how I always felt. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how to run a business. That's different than just working yourself into the ground for 10 hours, 20 hours a day.
10 hours is being nice.
Yeah, it was like 10.
Yeah.
But so I think that's where I pull a lot of that from, is because the guidance that I have, my brother's extremely busy, so I try not to bug him as much as I can, but I'll try and search out some of these things through podcasts, through books, through speeches, through whatever, to try and gain that business side of it, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. It's something I'm always curious about because like I told you, like even this entire like podcast media company, like thing that I do, college by YouTube. Like there's nothing that I could want to do today. Like I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not going to be a lawyer. I'm not going to be someone who actually needs a traditional education.
Yeah.
Anything else you want is on YouTube.
Yep.
And I think that's where like right now, like I'm crossing that phase in my business where it's like, it's never, well, it was truly just me for like 6 weeks. And then the old business I was at, my 2 editors who work for me / with me over there, they also left. And they found out that I was already doing well. And they were like, hey, can we help? And I was like, sure, you know. But like I'm still navigating. Like one of them has basically been full-time with me since that day.
Okay.
The other one works part-time and basically just like takes care of this one podcast that he always took care of at the other place. It was like, you just continue on.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to figure out and like I have tons of mentors. It's literally just actually implement what the F is being said.
Yeah.
Basically, that's where I'm to. But essentially like scaling past the, like, I'm the only one who does this in this way. Mm-hmm. And like, now it's like, okay, like everything that's on my plate, give to the editors. Because like, I already have them. Like, it's not like I have to go find I have them.
You have them.
But I have to give that away and then like not waste the time that I've freed.
Yep.
How do I know the actual steps to like go do for the next one, so that like I'm working on the business, not in the business. I'm not just like the high paid employee who like fills his day with other people's stuff. So that's where like I joked, like I very well could have started my own podcast in the last 2 years. Like I run a podcast company. I should probably have a podcast.
If anybody could do it, it's probably you.
Well, that's what, like in February I filmed 6 episodes, and then I was like, oh, I have to be like whatever my premium client is, I should be that. Okay. It was like, oh, so I have to come up with a bumper and I have to create a video bumper, and I was like, oh, I don't have time for this right now. So like,
yeah, that makes sense.
But like it doesn't though, I mean, because every business owner I talk to and I'm like, you should have a podcast. They're like, I'm busy, and I'm like, you're not too busy.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I'm busy. I'm like, okay,
yeah.
that's me not walking
yourself
the walk, you know. So it's just one of those like, oh, okay. And like I laugh now. I'll just say it here.
Sure.
But like August 6th is my 2 years being in business. I'll relaunch mine August 6th. So
there
that
you go.
Now I have a date to it.
We're gonna tag you in our description too. So August 6th or 7th, 6th, August 6th, we're gonna have
Sunday,
it
up. Even if it is, I'll launch at least one on August 6th, and then we'll pick another day of the week for the rest. But
right.
That's the thing that like I'll keep going, because like I'm inspired by you doing this, dude. Like it's really cool to see, and like I genuinely believe, whether it's like Mallory here at Blueform and like you helping with it, or the different things you guys do, like there's not a more powerful networking tool than having a podcast in 2021.
Yeah. That's what I'm realizing.
Like, the amount of people who are like you run 3 businesses, you have a child at home, you are married, you're ridiculously busy. If I just called you out of the blue and was like, hey man, like let's go to coffee, or like let's go whatever, you're usually going to be busy.
Yeah.
Like it's like, I like you,
I mean,
but like
go.
But you might, but like it's one of those things
I
though,
understand
like
what you're saying.
But if I'm like, hey dude, I freaking love what you're doing with this. Would you be open to us featuring you to have a conversation about it and like put that out there? More than not,
yeah,
it turns those tables, you know.
Sure.
And I learned that as like the behind the scenes producer for like the first podcast I started. That guy didn't reach out to people, I did, and it was like, hey, I help with this podcast, blah blah blah, nothing. Hey, my name is Danny. I'm the producer for this show. We focus on these people. We love what you're doing with this. Would you be open to us featuring you to talk about it? Like 95% were like, yeah, we're down.
I'm into that.
And like, that was the thing that like, whether they, like we were building a media company there. We weren't bringing in people to talk about media. We were bringing them in to talk about whatever. Yeah. And like I think one of the biggest things that like insurance people are like, oh, I got to talk about insurance. No.
Right.
Like you don't have to talk about your business. You have to talk about something you care about and then build the network, because it's not about the network like knowing you for being the insurance guy. Like in your case, like with vaults and holsters and stuff like that, like if all you did was get on in here and talk about like vaults and holsters, you have some people who would be like, this is cool. But like after so many episodes, you're like, I get it.
Yes.
You know,
it's getting old, man.
But if you're just talking about things that you're actually like passionate about and people just get to know you as you, I just trust that dude. Yeah. And by the way, I know he does vaults and holsters, and if I ever need one, that's the guy I'm picking.
Right.
And everyone that you bring in, like it's just this is a value add back to me. I'm grateful for you having me on here. Like it's something to me that is like, I don't know, no matter how busy people are, like there was multiple reasons for me to like make it over here, but it was one of those that was like, I'm at St. George for like 24 hours.
Yeah, I know.
Derick's on the list. Like we're going over there, you know, but like that's the power of this. And I think, like, especially in a town like St. George, it's already such a small town. Like, the amount of people who I've, like, seen, and, like, sorry if you saw me and I didn't come say hi to you, but, like, I've already seen, like, 6 people, and I've been in town not even a full 24 hours, and none of them were planned. It was just like, oh, shoot. Like,
right.
How do I tell people I don't have time to, like, do anything? And not that I'm, like, super popular. I just know a ton of people, you know?
Right.
But anyway, it's just one of those things where, like, up here in St. George where everyone kind of knows everyone and everyone's already got a guy, how do you overtake that? Just by being a good person.
Yeah.
And, like, getting to know the whole town in that way is so helpful, because that entire media company that I helped build the first time, we in the first year talked to, like, close to 70 people.
Wow.
And then, like, by the end of the second year, we were around, like, 140-ish. I was the contact for most of them. So again, when it came time that, like, I got fired from there, I knew all the leaders.
Yeah.
That my entire circle is dope people doing cool things in the world.
You got
like,
the black
that's
book,
it,
man.
dude. And, like, it was like when I started my business, I was like, do I want to take just any podcast, or do I want it to be, like, specific? And for me, especially in the beginning, I was the only editor. So it was like, well, do I want to edit anything, or do I only want to work with people who are, like, impacting the world in a positive way?
Yeah.
And, like, kind of like, you can choose to listen to, like, Rogan and his comedy buddies just doing, like, whatever. I do that too. Or you can, like, listen to something that's teaching you something. So in the beginning, and still for the most part, I really only work with people who I genuinely want to work with. I was very lucky, blessed, whatever you want to call it, that, like, I didn't have a high salary when I got fired. So I replaced that in a month.
Right.
And then I had zero fear of someone saying, like, hey, I want a podcast. Well, what do you want to do? Like, me and my buddies are just, like, really funny, and we want to, like, get high. Like, I can refer you to someone, but, like, I don't care to have that going into my ears. Like, it's not my thing, you know? And, like, I don't know. It became the coolest thing, because literally when I moved back to Phoenix from Texas, and we made it out of that whole thing, no one really knew me. Like, we didn't live in the same, like, ward area. Like, we came back, and it was just like, all right, I get a fresh start.
Yeah.
No one here knows what I've gone through. No one, like, how do we just be a more positive, happy person and, like, charge forward? And now, like, most people in my circle, through posts and things like that, they've kind of seen what's going on, but none of them would know me for that. Like, I'm down there, I'm actually known as, like, very happy, positive person who's just, I take pride in, like, just being known for being a good dude.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, in my business, we still don't have a freaking website. Like, I barely post on social media. I do all the things wrong for a media company that helps other people do those things.
Yeah.
But I'm incredibly grateful and blessed that, like, my thing has always been, if I tell you I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And I'm just known as a good dude. And we've lived off of referrals this first 2 years. And now we're at that point of, like, okay, I need systems in place, and I need, like, an ability to scale this past us, because, like, it's cool and it's already surpassed what I thought was possible, but I also didn't freaking think big.
Yeah.
And now
nobody does.
Yeah. And now I'm around people who run multi-million-dollar businesses and things like that. And I'm like, oh, like, that's a possibility. Okay. Like,
And they're like,
what?
wait, you don't do this?
Yeah. And that's, sorry.
No,
Like,
I've been there, man.
but,
I've had the same conversations.
yeah.
Because I'm like, no, I'm just going to work my butt off and make it work. And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, but if you just did this and this, it would save you 3 hours. And you're
Yeah.
like, ah.
Well, and also, like, what would it look like if my business was being just face of company, where I still do all the things I do, but I don't, like, edit. Now I have time to, like, go do a podcast and network all around Phoenix to do what I do, because that's freaking what I do,
Right.
you know? So, like, that's, I don't know. All of those to me are, like, learning lessons, though.
Well, I've had a guy tell me this a while ago, because I used to have a lot of pride that I owned 1, 2, or 3 businesses, right? And I would, like, before you would even ask, I'd be like, I own 2 businesses, you know, and I'd feel cool about it, right? And I had a guy ask me, he's like, well, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I've got this mailer out I go do, and then I've got these holsters I go build. And he's like, cool, so you own 2 jobs. And it hit me, dude. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I do just own 2 jobs.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I do what I want to do when I want to do it, but it's just 2 jobs. And so that's what you're saying, is you're taking that step from, you were the only editor, you were the only this, you were the only this, and to bringing those other guys in And honestly, dude, I'm in the same spot. I mean, I've had a business for a decade, but at the same time, that's where my scale's at with what I've got going on is I rarely do a mail route anymore. Like those are all hired out. I'm to the point right now where I don't even have to be at the store. Like, and that's the first time I've had that in a year. We just signed a new lease for another year.
Yeah.
And my problem is like, okay, what am I going to go open now? Like what business now? And I'm trying to like, instead of spreading myself out to a fourth one, how can I double down on the 3 I already have?
Yeah.
Because I've been told too many times, you know, dude, if you just focused on this one, you'd kill it.
Like something else that like vertically integrates with like holsters or something like that.
Or they're like, is holsters bringing a lot of money? Then you should just do holsters. And I'm like, I get it. And I totally understand. And maybe I'm going to be proved wrong in 5 years. I don't know. But don't put me in your box.
Yeah.
Because you can only do one fully. Don't put me in your box. And like, no disrespect.
Yeah.
But I'm like, if I can run all three and all three are profitable and we're not having major issues, like what, I don't understand what the problem is.
Well, if you're trusting people and putting the right team in place to help you,
yeah,
now you can play that game. Like
right.
if you actually are having to make all the holsters, man the store yourself, and do the mail routes, okay, you can't do that.
There's not enough time in the day.
Yeah, you literally can't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's a I don't know, it's a big thing that I'm learning. So it's like it's cool to see different people from my past who I'm realizing are like entrepreneurs and like, oh, I didn't know that. Like everyone in my world, if you wanted like the safe jobs, you could get accounting or something in that world. And then like the rest of us worked in factories. I don't know anything else. Like going through schooling, you always took the test of like the placements, no matter what freaking test it was, construction worker every time. And it was like, you are destined for, and I was like, okay, like cool. You know, like I'm like, by the end I realized I'm like, I just know the answers to get this. And this is what I'm giving. But like, I still didn't think that it was possible to go beyond that. Mm-hmm. And then like when I worked at Staley Catering all through high school and like loved that job, loved Darren Walker who like helped keep it all together. And like, I was told to leave there for money's sake much sooner, but like me, Jeff Chipman, Will Eaton, we're kind of like the three manager type people who just like, yeah, we work really hard and stupid hours, but like we just have fun.
Yeah.
You know,
enjoy it.
And like, then when we got past that and it was like, oh, now I work in a factory and like my wife's doing day shift and I'm on night shift and like, we don't see each other. And like, we're both trying to get the kids to take naps while we rotate so that we can take naps. Yeah. And it was just like, dude, like everything about this is like not cool. So like now how do I switch the mindset? Cause I'm like, I've realized like even now, like I take care of all my people, but like, I don't take care of me.
Sure.
Like I'm the heaviest I've been ever. Well, 2 months ago I was the heaviest I've been ever. And like now I'm kind of on that trajectory of like, how do I just make little better decisions? But like when you don't sleep, you make all the decisions you want. Your body doesn't work right.
Yeah.
And like I've had to figure that out and like, oh, okay. Like if I want to have more energy with my kids and do these different things, like it all starts with like me physically figuring that out. That's on me. Let me not break that or spill stuff.
No, I'm the same way. I don't know how to balance a lot of that stuff, and working is so important to me. I mean, I'm the heaviest I've ever been. I mean, I've fluctuated around like the last year probably, you know, where I'd go down and up and down and up, but I'm starting to make that switch of, and maybe Will's done it. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
I do think like, man, I'm 32 and I feel like this, you know, like what am I going to be?
I can't get out of this chair without my back hurting right now. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I'm the same spot. I'm right there. I'm like, I got to start changing something up, because as successful as you can be in, well, I mean, define success, but you know, as much as you can be in certain things, I'm starting to make that turn of like, okay, well, what Will thinks of me and the time I spend with him and my wife. I mean, I am more than blessed with my wife, but what my focus is turning to them, I guess, is what I'm getting at.
Well, and I think that's like important too. Like when I had Daxton, so it's been like 9 years.
Yeah.
That was when like, I don't know, a lot of people knew, like I went through P90X back then and went from like 250 to 199. And like, you knew me from middle school on.
Yeah.
Never a small person.
No.
So like weighing 199 and like seeing abs, like, dude, I didn't have that in high school. Like that was not
supposed
a thing,
to be your prime, Yeah.
And then like coming into everything now, like it's taken me almost a decade, and like I was 100 pounds heavier, and like I didn't realize how big I was until like a few months ago. I weighed in and I was like 342, and I was like, that's not that bad. And then I was like, that's like 8 pounds away from 350. Oh, that's bad. Like, and like that weird little teeter shift to me was just like, oh no. But like, I don't know. You see yourself every day and you don't think anything of it. I noticed my shirts don't fit as well.
Sure.
But like, it was also one of those moments where I was like, oh, like, remember all that crap I did that made me like feel depressed and like wreck my life? I don't feel that way, but I'm doing those habits again. I know that's leading in that way. And again, like, I'm very lucky I have like a really cool support group of people around me. So like now I have like a group of like Kyle Depius, I mentioned, he does the experiences. Those experiences are just like 13, 14 like male entrepreneurs. We're going to go on an experience together, and you're not going to freaking work. Like, leave your crap at home. I did not, so he got mad at me because I was up all day doing the experience with them and editing at night. And he was like, you can't do this anymore. And anyway, he put on this amazing experience in Park City, and I got to be around people who just, my brain still can't fathom where they currently are, let alone how big they're thinking past where they are.
Right.
You know? And like, since then, like when I left there's another experience coming up in October. And basically like I was given 2 goals, and this is the first time I've said this like publicly, but like the goal was 1 from March to October, no more editing for me, period. Like it has to be able to run without me. And like I have others too, I just haven't used them. So like it's on me, but like by October I have to have replaced myself so that I can then be more of a business owner and focus on all the other things that I'm neglecting, you know? And then the other one was, how do I lose 60 pounds? So that's where I say like I'm down 20 plus from where that started, but it's now just like, oh, okay. Like, why am I doing this? Because like when I lost the weight with Dax, it was like, I want to be the active dad. Yeah. Like I want to be the guy who can like,
I think when most competitive dads have sons, I think that's what goes through their mind.
Yeah. And it was like, I want to be able to do these things. And like now it's like, okay, well now what do I want that? And I realized I'm like, oh, it's the same thing. My son's getting more active than ever. And he's actually like going to be able to beat me in a race soon if I don't take care of myself. And like, that's not acceptable. You know, I've still got him, but mainly just because I have really long strides compared to a 9-year-old. But I don't know. There's all these realizations, and like, I think kind of tying back in, like all the different, whether or not something is depression or depressive episodes or what, like whatever lingo you want to put on it, so much of it to me comes back to like 2 things I decided when I was in Texas, and those kind of became the good in media and my podcast and all that stuff. One, and basically just that like too many people let bad moments ruin whole days. So I did that a lot. Okay. Something crappy would happen and I would just be pissed about it all day. And then the rest of the day wasn't productive either. And it would just allow me to just spiral, because then you tag a few of those days together. Now you've had a bad week, you know?
Sure.
When in reality, it's like someone cut you off. You feel like you're late because of them. And reality, you should have left earlier and it's not their fault. And this is not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
But now it's wrecked my whole day, you know, like, so that being one. Another one really being that like, if I can use my voice and actually talk about these things openly to me, I'm going to feel better. And like, do I have something right now that I'm working on that I'm actually like proud of, that makes me feel like I'm making progress? Because I'm like, when I'm starting to have like horrible days, even if I can send a text to someone that like I know has struggled in the past, because like there's a whole freaking list of people who through the different times I've talked about this stuff, they've messaged me things from, I was thinking about suicide and now I'm not, to, hey man, just thanks for like being open about that. Like I've thought about that in my past. And like, those are weird messages to get, because I'm like, I'm just another dude. I'm not trained on how to talk about this. So like, if you're actually messaging me like in that moment, I don't actually know how to help you other than saying like, maybe call this one. Like, But it's still one of those where, like, as I've used my voice, every time I've done that, I have felt better. And it gives me, like, a purpose.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that's kind of my thing is, like, around the company, it was like, how do I don't actually care about media at all. How do I care about this business? Because I don't wake up on fire. I do care about somehow, and I don't know how to even quantify it yet, but being able to quantify having impacted millions of people and, like, saved lives in that way.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how to quantify that, but when I look at my business as that, and I can say, like, no, I'm putting out all of these amazing people who are teaching people to be better versions of themselves. All right, now I'm in. Now I can help build that, you know, because that's more of an actual mission. And, like, one of the things that, like, I thought about was if I can really help each of these hosts grow, like, you think of, like, the ETs and, like, the different people who are, like, I don't know, I'll say they're the inspirational people now who are speaking on stages and all that stuff.
Yeah.
5-10 years ago, those people started putting out content. 5-10 years from now, there's going to be a whole new wave of influential, awesome people.
Yep.
How can I be behind 20 of those people and have helped them go from just, like, a person with a mission that they want to go do to actually be, like, someone who, like, truly gets to provide a living for themselves, their family, do all the things they want to do, but do it all through making an impact.
Yeah.
And, like, that kind of gets me, like,
who wouldn't get behind that, man?
But I think that's the thing, though, is, like, I still have my days where I'm like, why am I doing this? Like,
Sure.
What is this? But I think that's the thing is, like, if I can trick myself into being like, no, building that business, even though it's, like, this monetary thing that, like, I need money, I enjoy spending it. I've never been motivated by it. And, man, like, I've tried being motivated by money. I've tried being motivated by, like, chip on my shoulder and, like, one of those guys that, like, oh, they said I couldn't F them. I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not that guy.
You want to be a part of something.
Yeah. So I think that's for me, like, okay, how do I build a legacy within this? But also, like, again, one of the reasons for me wanting to have a podcast and use my voice more, I don't just want to be the guy behind 20 people. Like, I want to be up there with you. I want to say I got to help in this.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know. It's cool the access you get to people when you're having these conversations. Like, you're going to have people who, like, you would think, like, they just have no reason to talk to you, but you've heard their story. And when you reach out, it's like, oh, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. Like, really? Like,
well, when Mallory and I said we were going to do this, and she's like, I'm all in. We're setting up a studio. We're doing everything. She started building the Instagram page, and she's like, well, how often do you want to do these? And I'm like, well, geez, like, you know, if we did every week, that's 52 people. Maybe we do half that. You know, I want to run out of people in 4 months, you know? And I was like, maybe I'll just do one by myself every now and then to keep the numbers up. And then I put it out when it kind of started getting everyone seeing the Derick Leg podcast, not knowing what it was. I started having people messaging me. And so I just put it out there like, hey, we're starting a podcast. Message me if you want to be on it.
yeah.
And I'm like, let's just see what happens. And we went from like 7 people to like 30 people that night.
Yeah.
And so I kept on texting Mallory through the night. Well, not through the night, but the evening, you know? And I'm like, we're up to 19. We're up to 25. We're at 30, you know? And I'm like, I guess we're going every week if we can keep that many people going.
Well, it'll be cool because the more people you talk to, the more people are like, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so.
Yeah.
And then truly, like, your value here in the community just becomes the connector of, like, oh, you need someone who does this? Talk to so-and-so. I know that. And, like, there's nothing more valuable than just being the person in the middle who can be like, oh, I need to hook you up with so-and-so. And, like, I get nothing out of it other than, like, people just know, like, hey, I need something. Ask that person. Go over there. And, like, I'll either help you myself or I'll get you someone who can help you. But, like, the more value I can add back to you,
right,
the better it is for both of us.
Well,
like,
I think doing this, like, you asked me what it's about. And I've had a lot of people ask me, and to be honest, I don't even know if I have an answer. Maybe the Nicole thing would be the easiest way to explain it. But if talking to Nicole, if someone listens to that and it touches one person, this is all worth it. I mean, if we talk to 52 people a year and one person hears Danny's podcast and it helps them, that's worth it to me.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have people come on. It's cool to have you come on, you know, business owners, Marines, you know, whatever we're going to do. It's cool to have those stories and sit and talk. But at the end of the day, so many people struggle with so many things. And the majority of people are struggling with the same thing, if that's the right way to say it, but no one knows that.
Yeah.
And that's my point. And I don't have a better way to say it than that. But I mean, I kind of think that that's really what drives me to do this. Like, I have no monetary gain to do this. I'm pretty busy. Taking a couple hours a week out to do this, like, doesn't 100% serve me. But I think if we can help anyone that's on it, or the outreach touches someone else, that's what makes it worth it.
Yeah. And I commend the heck out of you for just like starting.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know. I struggle with that same thing. I'm like, what is it? I don't know. Just back burner it for now. You're like, no, we're just gonna plow forward and we'll figure it out. But like, that's what gets done, dude. And like, all this is like, it's consistency.
Yeah.
Because like some of the best podcasts and like the best people that I listen to, they didn't start a podcast to make money. They started it because they just felt called to talk about a thing.
That's how I feel, man. I feel like I've been in a lot of deep conversations with people, and my wife always says it to me. She's like, people just open up to you, and I don't know why. And I don't know why either.
Yeah.
But I think just being vulnerable, people open up, and I'm not scared to talk about anything. And so if something comes up and normal people won't do it because they'll look silly or you'll look weak, like, I don't have a problem saying it.
Yeah. But I think that's the like big thing with you is like, you are not a surface level person. And like, that's kind of how I've always, like, looking back on like, why did I always think that I hated people? I just mimicked my dad because that was like one of his sayings. I hate people. So I just went with that. But like, for me, I've realized I freaking love people. I hate surface level talk. I hate small talk. Like, if you're gonna have me on and like we're just gonna like barely scratch the surface of a few things and like we're done, like, I don't know.
No,
but like,
not really into that.
Yeah, I don't feel like there's any value gained from that, you know. But if you can tell a story and someone can see themselves in that, and that helps them through one moment that they might not have had yet, but they've heard your story, and now when they go through a hard thing, they're like, oh, this is kind of like that. I can get through it. That person did.
Right.
Like, whoever that is, whatever that story is, whatever that scenario, like, yeah, it's worth it. And like I said, like, being someone who has put out hard things over the years, like, I don't talk about it a lot. I barely post on social media in this moment.
Yeah.
But like, I still have people who know me for that.
Sure.
And like, they check in on me if they haven't heard from me in a while. And like, that was an unexpected benefit of this. But like, I had no idea that me putting out there that I was going to do this was going to turn into, I would say there's been at least 6 or 7 people who have truly been like, dude, I'm feeling this way like right now. What do I do? And I'm like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, do you want to talk? Like, what do I do? And like, I've never actually gotten on the phone with someone like that, but I really think just that ability to be like, I'm not alone. Boom. I can talk to you. You just relieve pressure because they told someone.
Yeah.
Just that small act, dude. Like it seems insignificant, but it really was. Like when I saw your response trying to be like, hey, like, this isn't about me. Like, let's keep this on Nicole. Like, that was like the first thing that went through it to me was just like, it's not new to you.
Yeah.
But it was totally new to us.
Right.
And again, as I was processing, like, bro, I've sat on that hill. I've had that thought. And then to like hear you be like, no, my dad went off that. And I was just like, shit, like, that's a real thing, dude. Like,
well, and I think my mindset at the same time was like, I didn't talk about it much. Like, I didn't have if someone asked me, I got zero problem talking about it.
Yeah.
But like, it was never something I just brought up.
Yeah.
But going back to that, it was like, hey, well, I kind of feel like I'm tied to this. And people be like, why? And then it was like, well, how do you not bring that up?
Yeah.
You know?
It's kind of vital need to know information in terms of like, why does he have this perspective?
Exactly.
But like, again, like it was like letting us grieve with you, even if you didn't really grieve in that moment.
Sure.
But it was just like, dude, I don't care if you didn't have a relationship with your dad. It still sucks.
Yeah.
Like there's no good that comes of that scenario, you know? And as someone who's like walked through that scenario in my head of like what happens, like it's interesting and scary to me to hear your perspective as the son who had to do it. And especially as someone who went through it in like teens, 20s, you know? And then like thinking of like, had I done what I was thinking about 5-6 years ago, my kids would have been like 3 and 5-ish.
Yeah.
And just like not knowing their dad. And like for them to potentially have the thought that dad could have done it because of them, or that I didn't love them enough to stay,
yeah,
or whatever that is, like that freaking broke me, dude.
For sure.
Like legitimately, like I don't know how to, like I could never go through with this. It doesn't help me get past this in this moment because I still like I'm trying to navigate whatever those waters are. But like I'm grateful that you're open to telling that story as the son, because it is one of those things that like there's a lot of us that don't have great relationships with our dads.
Yeah.
I often wonder, and like I am actually curious your take on this. For better or worse, I'm good at cutting people out. Like I knowing my own mental health, I only have so much ability to take on your stuff.
Sure.
And like I'm probably better at it with like you and I know each other, but like we've not been around each other. So like getting to talk all these things out, this is not you putting a burden on me. But like we've all had like toxic friends, toxic family members who like every time they're around it's just drama. And it's just like, you know what? Like I'm just going to not. And like I don't have to like make a big scene. I don't have to tell you off. But like I'm just not going to be around much, you know? And like, but I've gotten mixed, I'll say mixed reviews on like, what does it mean to cut out a part of the family?
Chopped, man. I'm your chopped. Like Amanda makes fun of me because she's like, man, if it doesn't like, not even like selfishly benefit me, like that's not the way. But if I'm not growing or if it's pulling me back and I'm not growing or benefiting from a relationship, you're chopped. And like she makes fun of me all the time and people will be like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, well, he chopped his dad. You know, like, I mean, how more extreme does it get than that, you know?
Yeah.
But that's how I've always had to be. And I think it started dating, like when I was dating girls and we'd break up, the only way I knew how to deal with it was just cut them.
Yeah.
You know, I just, dude, if I walk past you in Walmart, I'm going to act like you're just like everyone else, you know? And that's how it turned with my dad. And my dad's whole family, it was that way for years and years. There's only one, well, there's a couple uncles I wouldn't not talk to, but there's only one uncle I talk to out of my, and there's 9 kids in my, well, 8 now in my dad's family.
Yeah.
But I think for me and the growth and the trajectory I'm trying to go in a vertical line, I have to do that. Yeah. I just don't have enough time in the day.
Yeah.
And like I can tend to have like some gossip and stuff every now and then. And that's like my next thing in my life. I'm just trying to cut, man, because I ain't got time for it.
Yeah.
And like people will say, even like doing this, people are like, dude, you're going to have to be okay with people, you know, commenting and different things on social media. And I'm like, I don't care. Like say whatever you want. Like, I know what I have going on. I know who you are. I know the people that we're bringing on, or I know who they are. Like, say whatever you want, dude. I don't have time for the drama.
I think the beautiful thing of being a podcast host, and like, if there's anyone who's like the who's a good, we'll just say who's the best example. I'm not good with words, Derek. Also uneducated. But like someone who's like the prime example of like, you can't cancel them is Joe Rogan.
Sure.
Because like he gets in trouble on the monthly, we'll say, because someone said something on his podcast that was controversial. It doesn't even have to be him. But so many people have thousands of hours of his content and know his character that like he's untouchable.
Yeah.
Because people could come out and be like, hey, he did this or he did this. He's this kind of a bad person. Like, F that guy. And everyone's like, no, he's not. Like, I know who he is. Like, I've listened to him forever. Like,
he's got a little army backing him up, too.
But it's because you feel like you know who he is.
Yeah.
And, like, you've heard stories of, like, when people have met him in real life, no, that's who he is. He's not on the mic. I'm this guy. And then, like, in real life, I'm not.
Different.
Yeah. And, like, and I think that's the beauty of this is, like, people can talk what they want. But if there's an entire conversation, unless you've gone and heard the whole conversation, you can't judge this snippet of it.
Yeah.
You know? And the more of this you put out, the more friends and like people who fight for you that you're just building into your corner. Cause like, no, character witness. Like,
right.
Like I was there. I've seen how that person is like like
exactly.
This is not a thing, you know? So
that's interesting.
Small random thing, but like
I
things that I think
about
just
way.
because like, I don't know, don't want to go down that road, but I'm very against, people censoring things for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I'll just say that, you know, and I think that's one of those things to me that like the more you have out of who you are as someone who just deals with podcasts all the time, I'm just like, oh, this is brilliant. Like you can never get an attack on your character is never going to impact someone the way that if they don't have a digital presence. Like, it's one of those like debates of like, should I be on social media? Should I be all these things? And like, you don't have to be, but like, let's say you actually go on to build your 10th business and you are worth all this, and you just have people who don't like you because they just don't like you. And now you're getting crap thrown at you just out of that. Like, there's not going to be a better defense for you than to just ignore it, be in your own world, and keep putting out your own content so people can just see who you are as a person.
Right.
And that's it. Like, you just keep going. Like, I think it's the best like reputation management you can have.
You're right.
So
I never thought about, I mean, honestly, like I'm learning more about this stuff every time I do it. Like you're saying, I just kind of jumped in, and Mallory and I just ran with it.
I'm going to be like, I'm genuinely stoked to check in like a year from now, because I'm like, not even like numbers wise, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
But just like, what have you learned? What are the new circles you've gotten yourself into? Like, what random business came out of it? Because I think that's like the first company, like that guy wound up being an investor in like multiple companies because we had them on a podcast, found out they needed investors, and he was like, oh, I would invest in that. And it like, it just became one of those things that was like, this is just our tool to know everyone. Like, we did two things that just led basically me be the connector to a ton of people in Phoenix. One was me being behind the scenes of the podcast. Another thing, we did a video series called Why Arizona, and I think most of them are taken down now, just because we're not there. But essentially, I wanted to feature cool things you could go do in Arizona. So whether that was like indoor skydiving, like a flow rider, like surf pool kind of thing, or like the best restaurants, same thing. Hey, my name's Danny. I'm the producer of this show. We'd love to come feature you, whatever. And like, we would make these really cool videos, and essentially in return for like, can we come play on your thing for free? Or like, can you just give us some food that we can film and then we'll just eat it after? Like, that was kind of our thing, but it was the tool of like, again, I'm just networking. Like, I just know everyone. Everything was just like, I know 40 different restaurant owners here. I know like James Beard, like the culinary top people. And I know just like the guy that runs a taco truck. Right. And like, this is rad to be in this position. And like, I don't know, like, it'll be really cool to see, like, as you do these things, who do you meet that you didn't know? And like, that list that you have right now, guarantee you like 6 months from now, you'll have dozens more who you would have never thought of.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see like where that goes and like what your brain turns into. Like, all right, we're 10 episodes in. What is this becoming?
Well, and I've had people message me and they're like, dude, I need to be on your podcast. And I'm like you're saying, I'm like, man, I never would have thought, like, great. Like, come on. I'm not dogging them, but I'm just like, man, I never would have thought that you would have stepped up and done that. But 6 months, well, a year ago, I wouldn't have told you I would be doing this. So I don't know. I think it's going to be a cool thing, networking thing for sure. It's like you're the center and you have all of these, you know, lines connecting everything else.
Yeah.
And I've been that guy for a long time where it's like, I'm the guy that knows somebody. Mm-hmm. And so I think this is just going to build on all of that.
Yeah.
But no, I'm excited. I have my reasons for doing this. Like we've already gone over. At the same time, like Amanda brought it to me. She's like, you've got a lot going on. Are you sure you need to throw a podcast on it? But it helps me. Sitting down here with you, sitting down here with Tyson, like all these people that have been on so far, like I think it helps me process a lot of things. Like you were saying, I'm processing this right now.
Yeah.
I did the same thing with Tyson last week. I was like, he asked me a question. I'm like, I don't know, man. I guess I've never really thought of that. And so I think personally, it's also helping me a lot. Yeah. It's a stress reliever for me. And so I told Amanda, I was like, you know, I think it's helping me. Like the couple hours a week that I pull out when we go do this, it's helping me a lot more than, I mean, I don't know.
It's an unexpected benefit of not going to therapy, but getting to talk what you would have said in therapy.
Dude, that's the better way to say it.
Yeah. Like you're not going to therapy, but you're venting it all out. Like, and you're getting to relate back. And again, if we're just like me getting to tell my story, like you've just told me things and like, I'm grateful that you trust me with that. And like, obviously trust your audience with that.
Yeah, I know.
But like things that you're saying, like I've not told my wife this and like, okay, I think we need to process those things. And again, as just like stereotypical, like big dudes who don't feel things and like they're just hard charging people. Like that's the outer exterior. Also, you got a bunch of crap that we got to figure out because if we don't, it all comes back at like one moment.
Yeah.
And that moment sucks, you know?
Yeah. That's where trying to break this stuff down now and go over it now and go over it piece by piece instead of it overflowing all at once.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Well, I think that's about it,
Yeah, I was
dude.
gonna
What do you
say,
think?
man, I'm good. I'm very appreciative that you even thought of me to have me on this. Like, anything I can do to help you guys in any way. Like,
I appreciate that.
I'm stoked for it. Like, I'm genuinely excited to see the impact you make with this and like what it becomes, because like even the little bit that like you've gotten to do so far, like it's really cool. And like, I think you're going to get a unintended like selfish benefit to this. That's just going to be like personal growth for you.
Yeah.
And like, again, I'm just excited to see what that looks like and what that comes. So thank you for thinking of me.
No, thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming all the way from Arizona just to do this.
Basically. Thanks, man.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today. Please go like and follow us. Like us on Instagram. Subscribe on YouTube. I don't know what people do on Apple. I don't have an Apple. What do you do on there?
You just go hit subscribe and then hit the 5 stars and leave a review.
There it is. And give us some feedback. I've had a lot of positive feedback, which is great. If there's anything that you're like, man, I just can't handle listening to you guys because of A, B, and C, we want to hear that stuff. We do want to better this podcast. We want to build the audience around it. So
leave a positive review, but give that feedback directly to Derek.
Yeah, just message me. Don't put it in there and say we suck. So anyway, we'll wrap it up. Thanks, Danny, for coming. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.